It's a good thing. It was great. I have mine set to automatically go on Do Not Disturb when I park in the parking lot.
Welcome to the East Bridgewater School Committee meeting of November 8th, 2022. At this time, I would take a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Amanda.
Second.
Second by Scott. And roll call vote. Gordon?
Gordon.
Aye.
You have to say McKinnon, aye.
Or if you make me, Ellen, yeah. McKinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye. Fiddler, aye.
Walker, aye.
It's unanimous. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and
States of America, to the republic, which we stand,
under God,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
the delay. We have to work on that one a little bit. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Spagone, would you like to come up first so we can?
Sure. Do you hear us from here, or do you want us to walk somewhere?
Can you just stand in front of that mic?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Come on up here, buddy. I got a good friend of mine with me this evening as well, Tony Lapine. I think everybody knows from the middle school. So this is our 10th year for our annual food drive. We've had very successful. Me and Kate Burns got together 10 years ago and started this through the central school. We added the high school last year, and this being the 10th, we thought we'd do something a little bigger. The food banks, we have 2 in town, are both struggling a little bit. So we got together with not just the schools this year, but also with the town department. So we've got a very healthy competition between the fire, police, DPW, and the town hall, which will be fun to watch. And then, of course, the schools each have their own program. But more importantly than that, the reason I brought Tony here is, Tony's the GOAT of food drives, to be honest with you. 20 years he's been doing it down at the middle school. Tony's been very active with his program. So this year what we decided is the middle school program would be dedicated to his wife Sarah, who passed a few years ago. Tony, I brought you here just, like I said, not just to embarrass you, of course, but to thank you for all the time you put in.
Thank you.
Your wife's name will be a part of this and be a part of it going further. We hope to incorporate you with our drive from this point on. And, we had a very nice dedication to your daughter a few years ago.
Yep.
I was really happy with the schools. The school department got together, and for people that don't know, dedicated the bench that's out in front to Becky. And, it's been a nice run we've had together. I know that you're getting ready to roam off into the wilderness, so to speak, to do your thing, which is another congratulations to you and the time you put in.
Thank
but,
you, Pete.
Anything you like to say as well?
Yeah, I've been doing this for 20-some-odd years. The first year, back in 2002, I took some time off from work, and I was doing some odd jobs for people. A lady friend of mine settles estates for people, and I had the job of cleaning out this lady's cellar in Brockton. And she had bulk items, everything you could think of. And my job was to clean it out. And I thought of the food pantries, and that's how I got the idea, and I've been doing it for 20-some-odd years.
Well, you've done a great job, that's for sure. And I know the school appreciates it, and as well as the district and the town. So thank you, my friend.
All right,
And,
thank you, Pete.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless you had any questions or concerns, or
No, but you gave away the surprise that he's retiring.
I did.
We're just getting to that. That's like our third item.
Oh, yeah.
So- But yeah, the school thanks you,
right.
Tony.
I already know. Sorry.
Thanks, Peter.
We'll make him retire again.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
And Peter.
I'm out. You can stay and listen if you like, Tony.
Do I have to stay?
You don't. No. I'm just going to mention your name in a couple of minutes. You and I have already talked, so we're good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Take care.
I would be remiss if I did not thank EBCAM for always live streaming our meetings and recording our meetings. We have Lilia Fagundis up as our student rep. Would you like to give us your update for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to reach out to all of the principals from each building and get an update, which was nice. So I'm appreciative for that. So for the central school, they had a parent-teacher conference cycle on November 16th through 18th. And they had the Scholastic Book Fair and all the conferences went on at the central school. They had a cupcake fundraiser through the PTO, which was a huge success. So Ms. Byrne would like to thank everyone involved. Orders will be picked up over the course of a few days during the conference cycle. Their 10th annual food drive, as was just mentioned, will be held the week of the 14th through 18th, raising 1,000 points worth of food for local food pantries. And will earn the Little Vikings a pajama day. So that's the reward. On Tuesday, 11th through 15th, Mr. Rappold from Done with Bullying will be visiting during lunchtime, touching base with students and spreading the power of positivity and the importance of being an upstander. The grade 2 is on the second session of Waterwise. Will be beginning on November 28th. Ms. Donahue and Mrs. Cook's classes will be enjoying the 5-week water safety program. Exciting. And for the middle school, they had a small break due to COVID, but the school store is officially now open and running during lunch times. It is operated by the PTA, and it officially opened last Wednesday, November 2nd. It will be open throughout all 4 lunches from 11 to 1, and as it's only recently reopened, further information and logistics will be shared as details of operation are finalized. Last Friday, November 4th, the entire 5th grade spent a day writing in workshops with children's book author Erin Petty. Over the course of the day, the guest author held 4 separate workshops where she guided students through the writing process and development of their own individual stories. She's the author of The Particular Haunting of Thelma B. and Thelma B. in Toil and Trouble. Administration is hoping to work with her on future workshops for other grade level students. And the last thing for the middle school is that on November 14th, it is World Diabetes Day. So they are going to be recognizing that and have the campaign that they're having recognized is represented by a blue circle logo. So next Monday, the middle school will be encouraging all students and staff to go blue that day and wear your blue in recognition. Lastly, for the high school, we just wrapped up the term on the 4th, Friday, and teachers are finalizing grades to be put on report cards, and report cards will be available for parents and students on the 14th, Monday. And all sports teams are wrapping up their seasons, all very good records and just all in postseason play, which was very nice. I know the football team has their last game, last regular season on Thursday, which is senior night, and then their Thanksgiving game. The youth football program, the Pee Wee and Mites team, made it to the Super Bowl, so they'll be hosted at the high school this Sunday. And the cheerleading team competed last Saturday at the South Shore League Championship and qualified for regionals this weekend. An exciting thing for Mr. Clements is that Thanksgiving break will be completely homework-free this year, so no teacher is allowed to give assignments over the break, which will be nice, and I'm sure all students will be excited about. We had a spirit walk on Friday for all the fall sports teams to celebrate postseason play, and the student body would just finally like to acknowledge, appreciate, and thank all veterans in advance of Friday for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. So you got out to all the principals, and they're working with you?
Yeah,
That's
yes.
good to know.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you. Next up, we have Superintendent Corner.
Thank you. If you can see, as you walked in tonight, we have a new a banner that was given to us by Kyle Cares and Jim Johnson. about Mental Health Matters and the Kyle Cares Foundation. His father, Jim Johnson, runs this Kyle Cares Foundation. We've worked with them here at the school, and what they do is they support mental health. The schools will be in 2 weeks celebrating Mental Health Day in a week, passing out T-shirts throughout the district for all staff to wear. We do believe that mental health matters, and we will continue to work with the Kyle Cares Foundation. I have asked Jim if he would come and present in January about mental health and supporting our students, and hopefully joining the JED Foundation moving forward. We are seeing a lot of anxiety, anxiousness in the schools. We are supporting our students the best that we can, but there's always more that we can do for our student body, and we'll continue to work. But I want to thank Jim for making the sign for us and getting it here as quickly as possible, and we wanted to show it off. I think it is important for the school committee, the district, to let our families know, let our students know that we are here. There's always an adult that is here to listen, and we want students to know that we are listening and they can come to us when they need our help. The coffee with the superintendent update, we talked about that the last time. We had four parents come in, talk to us from busing issues all the way to what are we going to do post-graduate when my son or daughter graduates from East Bridgewater, where they're going to go. Next week on Tuesday, November 15th at 4 p.m., I will be at the Mitchell School with some coffee and cookies. If any parent would like to join me or any community member would like to know what's going on in the schools, if you have questions, issues, anything about any of the schools, I'll be there to host an afternoon. And then 2 weeks after that or 3 weeks after that, however it falls on the calendar, I think we have Thanksgiving, so maybe 3 weeks after that, we'll have another, and it'll be at nighttime. So it'll be like at 6:30. So I'm trying to hit everybody, a morning meeting, a midday meeting, and an evening meeting. So hopefully that helps everybody.
And those will go out on Parent Square like the one before?
Yes,
Yeah?
yep, and we'll continue to blast it out. I want to thank, again, we've got 2 retirements, and the materials are enclosed. You just saw Anthony Lapine. His date will be February 14th. 2023. We thank Anthony for all his help. We worked with him today actually on a door down at Mitchell School while we were down there trying to figure out why it wasn't locking, and he helped us figure that out. And we wish him the best of luck, and tonight we obviously saw why he is a wonderful member of the community and our school community. Jill Nunes has put into an intent retire. She's been here not as long as Anthony, but she certainly will be missed, and she's going to go on to an opportunity out in the real world, away from the school world. So we wish her the best of luck, and that is in your packet as well. A busing update, I'll give you a quick busing update. We are looking at, we have 13 buses that are at the high school in the morning, then we go down to 12 buses at the Mitchell School, and then it comes back to 13 buses at the Central School. We know that we have had trouble keeping up with the 13 buses at Central School, and of course, iBus and A-Bus have been late, and unfortunately, they were due to, we didn't have enough drivers, we had some illness in the drivers. They have been making amends to that. Gina, John, and I sat with Gail Lucini on a phone call the other day, talking about what can we do and how can we get these buses to service the students so that we get kids on time, or at least have a time that parents can rely upon on a daily basis. And that's the big thing. I mean, we can come in 15 minutes late, but as long as a parent knows that we're going to be at 3:45 every day, that's better than not knowing if it's 3:45, 3:30, or 4 o'clock. And Gail from Lucini Bus Lines has been working with John on rerouting and increasing, looking at increasing some of the bus sizes, not bus sizes as in bigger buses, but putting more students on a bus. And so we're looking at 13 buses in the morning, 12 at Mitchell School, and 13 at Central School. And what's going to happen, what was happening is one of their buses had to go to Southeastern and could not make it back for the afternoon run, and that's what's making us late, and so we were doubling up on buses. They have now added a new driver. We also have a driver that has come back from illness, but we still are looking at keeping that bus at going 13, 12, and 13 because we don't need the bus right now. And that would allow us to make sure that parents can make sure that we can get time, be more timely with all three runs, high school, middle school, and the elementary school. When asked, the question was come up about contractual obligations. We are to run 13 buses at each school, but I can tell you this, that they have obliged us when we've had playoff games. They haven't charged us for. There have been routes that might have needed another extra water-wise bus. They have done stuff for us. John keeps tab of that. We go back and forth. I can say this about Lucini, since I have been here, they have worked with us, and they are continuing to work with us. Throughout all of the Lucini districts, we have the least expensive contract with Lucini out of many of the school districts around us. And they have worked with us extensively over the years that I have been here. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that, John, but, I mean, that's pretty much where we were at.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up. I mean, they're doing their best.
Yes.
It's, from what I see from other school districts, schools are having to cancel athletic events, field trips. We haven't had to cancel one athletic event. We haven't had to cancel one field trip. You know, there are times where we give them a day's notice about an athletic event that got rained out, and you know they're working hard, and it's frustrating for us in the office. It's frustrating for parents, but hopefully we can come to some type of resolution with this middle school route going down to 12 buses instead of 13. I really think that would help give parents, you know, a consistent time of day when their children will be arriving home. It may be a little longer on that route, but, you know, I think knowing when your child will be coming home rather than having to wait every day for a parent square is better than not knowing. So we're working hard. We're on the phone with them every day. I know they keep saying they have people in training, and so hopefully things are looking better. But you know, I know it's frustrating for everybody.
I think the communication that we have with Lucini is open, and so that's the best part about this, is they are communicating with us, we are communicating with them. We hope that we are communicating with our parents and trying to get the information out. I know sometimes it doesn't seem timely, but it's the timeliness that we get from when we hear from the drivers or Lucini themselves calling us and say, we're running late at Mitchell. So once we're running late, and especially if the high school runs late at any time, then that's the Mitchell school, then that's the central school. It just keeps pushing the central school. We certainly don't want to drop a kindergartner off at 4:15. That's not our goal, or 4:30. And we certainly don't want a parent waiting or a second grader walking down now as daylight savings time. So I think this week's has seemed better. Monday and last week was better, and the Monday yesterday was a lot better. We have a full complement of drivers right now, so things seem to be moving in the right direction, and we'll keep you updated on those.
I think it's better now that the person's back from being ill.
I do, but again, they're also servicing a southeastern run, but we do have an extra driver now, so yes.
I know last week there were a couple days where Mitchell was fine, but Central got screwed up.
And
And that was tough because the notification went out really late, and like the kids would normally have already been out of school.
Right.
So there were parents scrambling.
And Mr. Puckett is out with the buses, so he's texting. I will tell you this, because we're on the texts with him, and he's texting Mrs. Byrne. They're on their way, or he'll tell them when the last bus is leaving. But if John or Joanne Benner do not get that call from the bus yard letting us know that there may be something going on before they get to Mitchell, he's sort of stuck because he's outside waiting.
Right.
So that's something that the communication has been increased, I can tell you that. But yes, and that we feel badly that parent square goes out and you're already waiting outside, and now all of a sudden you get the bing, and now you're 20 minutes late. And I did talk to a couple parents. You know, I left work early today. I was there. I waited. I didn't have to leave early. And then the next day, okay, I stayed on my regular work schedule. I got there and I was late to pick up my son or daughter. So we're working on it. I know it's frustrating, and we'll try to get there, but we'll keep everybody up to date.
Thank you. So the next thing up on the agenda is the review of school committee goals. They are not ready. We thought that they might be ready today, but they're not, so they'll come back for the December meeting. And next up, we have Mr. Shea with our budget update. And from what I understand, everything pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah, it's, I mean, since 10 days, 12 days ago when I gave you the update, things are pretty much, haven't really changed, if any at all. Our non-salary budget, this is something I handed out before the meeting.
Yeah.
Our non-salary budget, we have an available balance of 1.1 million. Last year at this time, we had an available balance of 653,000. That seems, well, it is a lot higher than last year, but I know going through encumbrances, there are certain encumbrances that are not in the non-salary budget this year. So I wouldn't look at that as saying we have a lot more cushion. I think it's just pretty consistent to where we were last year. We do, on the non-salary side, I was notified we may have a couple out-of-district residential tuitions coming up, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on our operational budget, because those could run us a couple $100,000 apiece
You mean for the end of this year?
for this year. Salary budget, 15,500,000 available balance. Like I tell you guys every time I review this, I update every payroll into my salary model, and we are seeing a little overage of the budget in certain areas, like ISAs. Those are needed. There's nothing we can do about that. But we are sticking to the budget, budgeted positions, but when something is needed, like an additional ISA for a one-to-one, I mean, our hands are tied. Those are things we need to do. A revolving fund, anyone have any question on the
Are we getting substitutes for the ISAs that aren't filled? No subs for the ISAs that aren't filled? No?
No, there's no subs. We're having trouble getting subs for teachers. We do the best that we can. I will say that the principals, if we need a one-on-one, they will switch off with someone who could be in a classroom, and if a student needs a one-on-one, we'll make that change on that day.
Thank you.
revolving fund balances, there really isn't much change from the last time I reviewed. Again, sped tuition in revolving is a negative. I just want to point that out. That'll be positive. I need to make a couple expense transfers, but that will be positive. So I know it's showing up as a negative, but once I make those transfers, that will correct that.
Does anybody have any questions? No. Thank you. And next up, we have vaping in schools.
So it has come to our attention, I know that you received correspondence. I also spoke to that parent who came in and talked to me about vaping. Bill and I, we had our principals meeting yesterday, we talked about this again. This is it's disturbing to all of us that students can purchase or get their hands on any type of vape. I mean, you're actually, you're inhaling a battery. You're inhaling really bad stuff into your system. We have had, I'm going to send this out, we have sent over 45 referrals. We are hooked up in a program called I Decide, Drug Education Curriculum, Intervention, Diversion, and Empowerment. It's a drug education curriculum developed to provide behavioral support and psychoeducation for middle and high school students. The program is designed to serve as a secondary prevention for effort for youth at risk for escalation to problematic substance use and an alternative to suspension, expulsion, and other exclusionary practices for school-based substance use infractions. I Decide provides schools and practices for school-based substance use infractions. I Decide provides schools and communities the resources to empower students to engage in healthy decision-making. I Decide is not a cessation program and is not meant to be used in lieu of a treatment. We are working, and we are trying to do everything that we can to prevent and to empower students to be educated about the dangers of vaping. I will tell you this, and Bill can come forward if you'd like to at this point, or you can hit it when you get to NEASC. We have sent 45 referrals to iDecide from 2021 to 2022, intense counseling and substance abuse prevention. We have had 9 students caught vaping since the first day of school of 2022, this September. Our numbers have been trending down due to staff in hallways and iDecide and consequences that are alternative than and from suspension. Certain staff will be trained by iDecide counselors so that we will be able to run the program in our building. We are on the wait list, but continue to use their service and review for our students. It's a very difficult problem. It's an issue, it's hard to get to. We come in the bathrooms, they're as small as a little cartridge. It's difficult to find them. We can go into the bathrooms, we can go into lockers, we can find them. We also know that we've taken vapes away from parents. They'll come in and say, I don't really care, I'll buy another one. We try to educate the parents that this is a dangerous, dangerous substance that's going into your lungs. We hope that parents understand that, or guardians or grandparents understand that. Kids give somebody $20 to go into a vape store, and someone goes in, buys them a vape, and hands it over. And I don't even know if that's how much they are right now. I know that we had some kids buying them off of Amazon at one point a couple years ago, and then selling them here in the building. They took care of that. Bill can talk about the MIAA rule. We did have a couple students vape that were part of different organizations, athletics, and were not able to participate in an athletic event due to vaping. The coaches are in the locker rooms, teachers are in the hallways, assistant principals and Mr. Clements are in the bathrooms. Christy Anderson and I spoke about this yesterday. She sent me some of this information. They're doing everything they possibly can to divert students from using vape. I mean, Jewel was, I think, sued for hundreds of millions of dollars, and they paid it like this, and now I think they're back in business selling vapes. So I think it's.
May I add
You have to-
something here?
You have to, hold on, you have to wait until public comment section.
Okay,
Sorry.
but this is the only reason why I'm here, because I beg to differ how this is being handled.
But you still have to wait until the public comment section, sorry.
May I?
Oh, sure, go ahead, sorry.
So this is an area where schools across Massachusetts hired me to come in and do these presentations on vaping in the school communities with the students, parent nights, and then teaching staff. And the staff, it's all different levels, from working with nurses. I recently was in a district educating and providing resources to all the nurses in the district so that they could see what was happening with kids, because you're getting all these kids coming through the doors of nursing and trying to help people understand the signs and symptoms while in the school day. So this is an area where I kind of, no pun intended, live and breathe it on a regular basis with my work. And it's in every district. It seems almost like an impossible challenge to try to get a hand on it. There's a lot of preventative measures out there with vape detectors and things like that. Teenagers, middle schoolers, they're developmentally appropriate, looking for loopholes. It doesn't mean it's okay, it just means they're always finding some new way. In my most recent presentation, I had gone online and saw how easy it was to purchase one. The coward in me didn't press submit because I was like, I don't want to buy that. But it was so easy, and I'll tell you, not that it would have mattered because you could have lied, but no one even asked me to verify my age on the website. The marketing of these companies is incredible. They're targeting our youth, and it's working, and they're targeting youth in ways for it to be deceptive. So it's easy to conceal, it's easy to hide, it's on their person, you can't necessarily go searching. So I'm not saying this to speak on behalf of East Bridgewater Public Schools and what might or may or may not be done. more than I'm saying it, that it's an epidemic, it's an issue in all schools that every school is trying to get a handle on, and all districts are struggling, that I know of, right? I don't know every single district or talk to every single one, but all of them are struggling. So I do think that the interventions so far that East Bridgewater is putting in are attempts, like most other districts are doing. I don't ultimately know what's gonna end this or get people to do things differently. So I don't know, for whatever that was worth, it's what I'm immersed in on a regular basis. And there's no shortage of schools reaching out, asking for help. So just wanted to throw that out there.
We've heard, Bill and I both have heard, those schools who purchase the vaping alarms in the bathrooms. They're constantly going off.
Yeah.
The principals have told the superintendents, please turn them off. We can't have them. Some school told us it was a 7 minute, every 7 minutes they were going off, and in high school one day. And so it was just so much that by the time you get to the bathroom, it's gone. The kids are gone. So, but I'm gonna ask Bill, he is the principal of the high school, junior, senior high school, and maybe enlighten us a little bit more on what you're doing.
Sure. I mean, we can speak on it for a minute or an hour. Minute's good. We are continuing to look. One of the things that we did put into place last year, if you've been around, or we have the airport-style bathrooms here where there is not a door that closes. So you have to, there's still privacy, but you have to go in and turn a corner. Previously, we have closed down numbers of bathrooms. It's not ideal. It disrupts the educational process. Students have to be out longer, but there's 2 bathrooms on every floor, and that allows us to put 1 person outside the bathroom, not inside, but you can just have somebody there. We've got rolling desks, and they can set up. Sometimes Mr. Taylor, myself, Ms. Anderson, that's one opportunity that's there. As we head into the holidays, another thing that comes up, just in terms of how students do acquire them, particularly for teenagers who are underage, are Visa gift cards, or anything like that that serves as a credit card that enables it to, and that's not an EB-specific thing, that's just years of experience, that is one of the easier ways that are there. There are stricter consequences for students that are caught distributing or selling, as opposed to students that are there. We do have this I-Decide program. It's a nice alternative. It's a nice educational program. As Ms. Anderson and Superintendent Legault said, it's not a cessation program, but an educational one. There are a lot of districts in the line to get trained. We were hoping to already have staff in-house trained at this point. We haven't gotten there yet, and despite all of that, we're not so naive as that, like, there are frustrations, there are problems, there are worries, there are concerns. It does impact the social fabric of the school. And we're aware of it, and we're doing what we can to stay ahead of it and get in front of it proactively, but we know that that's not enough for everyone all the time.
Is there a SAD chapter here
Yes.
for Students Against Destructive Decisions? Do they go out and take some sort of initiative on educating their own peers around?
They have gone out. It's not always specific to vaping. Sometimes it's specific to drinking. They have gone out and with permission, and they have gone so far as to put stickers and signs in every institution in town that has a liquor license. So that's something that's there. And again, I think it's just, there's only so many holes in the dam that they can plug, but they are, as active as they can. Even if you walk through the bathrooms or walk through, you'll see signs, student created, student hung around it. The problem is, we are dealing with addiction issues. I mean, there's more nicotine in one of those vapes than there is in a pack of cigarettes that kids would smoke when I was in school. And it's not an excuse, but the kids get hooked quickly. And you're right, their marketing is great. The pessimist in me fears that it'll stop. I mean, kids don't smoke cigarettes anymore because the vapes are here. My fear is that it may continue until it's replaced by something, whatever the next generation is.
Are there cessation programs available for kids, students, like that age?
So in
Range?
EB, any student that is caught vaping or in possession of a vape, we refer with parental knowledge to the I-Decide program. So that is not done here in-house, it's done through Mass General, And Ms. Anderson had reached out to me, she's like, if school committee wants to know more, she's happy to come, and she's the expert, she can speak to it more eloquently than I. However, we have that cessation program in place, and I'm sure, and I refer to Ms. Fiddler, like, anything that's out there, I have to imagine the, demand far outweighs the supply in terms of what is available to work with, and not just, because there are parents who will say, yes, I know, I can't help, or I'm not going to help. There are more parents who say, I want to help, can you help me help my child? And it's still a struggle.
Some questions that were asked to me were, is it possible to have the kids, are they, maybe there's some privacy thing or something, but can they be tested?
We, as a school district, will not test students. Parents are able to do so if they so choose, but no.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Thank
You
you.
know, I've been giving this a lot of thought, because I have a 7th grader and a senior as well, and I've been hearing the rumors in town as well. And I can't think of a good solution. I know you can't put a teacher in the bathrooms, that's just
Yeah.
ridiculous and not feasible. There is some sense of responsibility for the students at this age. They're more mature, they're gonna make both good and bad decisions. I wish I had any solution. I'm sure the committee does too. And I know there's parents out there that are very concerned, and I'm appreciative of the thoughtfulness you're giving it, and you're working with different solutions to the problem. I personally, I physically have nothing. I can't think of a good solution to this besides some personal accountability for the students.
And education, I think that the more people can be educated and informed, there's so many parents that I will sit with or attend a presentation and they're seeing a visual for the first time they've never seen. They don't necessarily know what they're looking for. I think that the awareness of that, and then also the resources that are available online are pretty
I know that
informative.
EB Hope is another big program that we have a very strong partnership with. We meet, and anything that we can come up with, they're happy to do. I know that without speaking to them, they'd be happy to come on board and offer up a community education night. And it can be simple tricks around those gift cards. When does the mail come to your house? Do you have, even no matter how active you are as a parent, does the mail come before you get home from work so that somebody can check that mail? Or does the mail come to somebody's house on your street? And that's how a lot of times things will come in. There are more cartridges and things in play, and I'm not just speaking for EB, again, every high school in America, but we got a long weekend coming up. There will be more in the building on Thursday. There will be more in the building on Thursday because students are trying to get their hands on them to get through a long weekend. But again, we're spending time on this, and I'm not minimizing it, but for all the energy and effort that's spent on that, we're not now, yes, health, emotional, physical well-being is preeminent and should be and is number one. But the time spent on that, we're not able to focus on instruction. We're not able to sit down and talk about the useful, how data is being used. And I'm working with a second-year teacher who has a question around how to make a lesson to go from good to great. And teachers are not police. It's not a jail. It's bad enough when we have to do a search of students, and that's a whole other thing that happens. But it's just, where does the energy and the effort go? And that's it's not a complaint, that's a frustration that I see the expression on everyone's face is shared.
I think it was EB Hope that did it, but prior to COVID, they would periodically, at various events, they would have like a room set up.
Hidden in plain sight.
Yes, hidden in plain sight, yes, that's what it was.
Yep.
And I know, obviously, there wasn't an opportunity to have it, during COVID and all that, and I wonder if, I know it's hard also right now to get parent engagement, for anything, but that might be.
So in the past, we would borrow the trailer from Plymouth. Now EB Hope has their own trailer. We've put all staff through it, through professional development as well. In the past, what's been most successful is during parent conferences. It wouldn't be the trailer, but it'd be set up in the lobby. They've had it in the lobby here as well as the lobby of the Mitchell School, and just giving parents a better understanding of, what they're looking at or what to potentially look for. So we've done that. hasn't been huge crowds of
Right.
parents, but still, parents that are looking for that information, then certainly we can get back to providing that.
Now, one question I also have, now I know we've been focused on the high school. Has any of this trickled down to Mitchell yet?
Sure.
We've had the, like Dr. Williams just said, we've had the hidden in plain sight. I know that the adjustment counselors go out and they talk about this in their class time. When they go out, we talk about vaping is a big thing. Because last year we had it, now, obviously, Mr. Marquette wasn't here, but we did know that some students were vaping in the building, but vaping on the bus. And so Ms. Dupre was an all-out assault on that and trying to educate and say, listen, you don't want to get involved in this. And, Officer Talitha, our school resource officer, talks about this constantly with the kids, how dangerous it is, and don't get involved in this. Is it a gateway drug? Could be, because it's so addicting. And kids are looking for an outlet, to calm down. Maybe it's a calming paraphernalia to use. I will say this, we talked about putting doors on the bathrooms. We've been talking about this for years. These things are as big as, a little cartridge. But from less and less going through somebody's pants pocket or shoes. It's hard to stop it. I know that we have kids that will say, stop, you're vaping in here, you're gonna get us in trouble, right? You have the kid that does that. And then we have the adverse effect of, you're a snitch, you're this, you're that. So then you've got both of those, and it's middle school to high. I think we all are talking about, there was an all-out assault on cigarettes years and years ago. We see less and less people smoking. There's been an all-out assault on drinking and driving. That seems to be halting, not halting, but we have less of it, I hope. And I hope that as we continue to talk about this in health class and in classes and with everything that we do.
There was a huge push on this prior to COVID. We were, news stories every day of an adolescent in a hospital setting.
Yeah.
Athletes or musicians or theater people who couldn't perform because they had lost an ability to breathe well, right? We were flooded with this information, and then COVID took a lot of that away as a focus, obviously. And I think it's starting to come back now with more and more schools trying to struggle with what to do about how to manage it. So I think a question that I imagine people have in the community is, okay, we can all understand that's what's going on. Is there a policy or protocol, right, being followed for one-time caught, two-time caught? And I understand the I decide is referred, but what about when someone is caught or reported in some way, and what's the follow-up?
So the short version is yes.
Yeah.
And in my time here in EB, we have actually increased the consequences for a first and a second time offense. I'm proud of the work that has been in place and is spearheaded by Ms. Anderson, by our behavior specialist, but we work to keep students in the building. Yeah. That's something that we all believe in very strongly, particularly for that offense. If a student is caught vaping, they are in the building, they're serving their suspension in place. For the first several offenses, they increase. Now, yes, 4 or 5 times out, then we get there through progressive discipline. Included in that is an educational program. We are still dealing with repeat offenders. We also have our chemical health violation, which the MIAA says students lose a minimum of 25%, and that is drugs, alcohol, vape, anything like that. We, as a town, a first offense, you lose 40% of a season. So our standards here in East Bridgewater, I'm proud to say, are more stringent than that. We have had students this year across multiple sports impacted and lost portions of their season because of that. We have also had students where, because that is a driving factor for many, not for all, but that's what gets some students here and that's what they care about, is that suspension needs to be served in a good faith effort. Let's suppose, for example, I'm a basketball player, that's my sport, that's what I love, that's what I care about. If I get caught, I might want to run or play a fall sport, just so I can get it out of the way. In the determination of Mr. Leonard, Ms. Anderson, myself, if a student serves their suspension and then drops off the season and just checks a box so they can get to what they care about, then they serve that suspension again. It has to be, and that's very clear, put forth a good faith, full season effort for that to account. So we do have policies in place. They're in the handbook. And short of putting students out of the building for a first offense, which frankly, I don't think helps. It's not what we want. We do everything we can to handle progressive discipline and to keep students in-house where they belong, unless we're dealing with the most egregious of circumstances. But again, supplying, or if there's proof that is selling, which does come up too, then there are harsher consequences and penalties for that.
Do you find, sorry, I have so many questions, I'll stop, this is a lengthy agenda. Do you find that athletes then follow the consequent, like the code, I guess,
Yeah.
better than non-athletes? And then what happens to the non-athletes for consequences and
Sure.
motivation to not do it?
So there's still the academic consequence there. I think
Okay.
there's more of there's still a disciplinary consequence, there's the academic consequence. There are more, there's a social consequence there. It comes up more, frankly, where we have teeth around dance season, proms, semiformals, homecoming, things of that sort, because your education is a right. Those extracurriculars are awesome, but they are not a right. And that is something that is there. It's a little bit stringent. One of the things we struggle, I mean, if there's one drama performance and you miss that one, is that equivalent? Is it, I mean, it would be great if there were 10 drama performances for many reasons, but that's something that we struggle with. Is it fair to not have it impact at all? Is it fair to miss, you work 4 months for one night? So those are tough too. And again, I speak frequently with other principals in the South Shore around the state as we're constantly looking to revise, tweak, modify what's in our handbook, what's not. It's a struggle, but I am proud that our consequences are meant to educate, keep kids in the building, and go above the minimum than what other towns have.
I'll rest my questions.
It sounds like we have a good plan for when they're caught,
Yep.
trying to help there.
Yep.
What are we doing for the children that are maybe curious about it, or are gonna be peer pressured into trying? Have we brought any speakers in for an assembly on the dangers of this and cancer and all the many health benefits? And I would imagine you talk to any 60-year-old would go back to his 12-year-old self and punch him for trying it, because now it's been 50 years of trying to quit. And every smoker I know that is my age
Yeah.
has spent their entire adult life trying to quit
Yep.
that decision they made when they were young.
Yep.
And you hopefully can reach the kids and tell them, don't even try, because it's the whole bad path you're gonna lead yourself down.
Sure. So, again, the short version is, yes, we have parent informational nights put on by EB Hope ahead of proms and graduation and things of that sort, and I'll personally get out in front, we'll talk about that. But again, we're not minimizing here, we're talking about vaping. We've had Kathy Meyer-Sullivan come in, I believe it was last year. Her daughter went to King Philip and drowned in a 6-inch puddle after a night of social drinking, and she got separated from her friends. It's one of the most powerful presentations I have ever witnessed. But again, there's so many things that we're worried about, and there's also the academic component, that it's really just a balancing act between, and we do try to kind of stagger it every few years so that it's not the same message ad nauseum for students. And if you see it in 8th grade, we don't want you to sit through the same thing in 9th or 10th grade. But again, every couple of years, we try to change it up and bring them in and just, carry that balancing act of still getting through everything else that's on our plate. But if there are, and I would put this out to the greater community also, if there are partnerships, if there are presentations, if there's anything that people hear of, talking with friends, family, other towns, other communities, reach out to us directly. Let us know. We'll entertain anything and everything if we feel that it would be helpful to our students.
We know a lot has to do with peer pressure, anxiety, trying something, trying to get away. I just sent this to Bill today, working with the Kyle Cares program. Jim Johnson had set us up with Minding the Mind, And these are student programs, and they are programs where students come and speak to students. They may be, or had a issue as a student at 16 or 17, now they're out talking to students at age 20 or 21. And these are local people, could be from Connecticut or Pennsylvania or Massachusetts or Connecticut. Jim put me in touch with the director. I spoke with her today, and I sent it to Bill and Christy Anderson, and we hope to do a day in December, a full day of presentations, one for 7 and 8, one for 9 and 10, one for 11 and 12. And again, as Bill said, then we're pulling kids out of classes, we're using, but it is critical for us to get, for these types of programs to get out, so kids start to feel it's okay to be nervous, it's okay to be confident, it's okay to have questions, it's okay to go to an adult. We need to be mindful that they're still adolescent and they're still going through growing up.
There's another
So-
one, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, but-
Also coming in December, you may hear, it's got a catchy title, Cheeseburgers, Chainsaws, and Rock and Roll. Despite that title, there will not be chainsaws flying around in the building, but that is another presentation that's meant around mental health and exactly that. Peer pressure, it's about someone who decided there's another presentation there. Again, community grant funded, and it's specifically around that, around having the courage to follow what you want to do, how to do it, what not to listen to, what not to get sucked into, which is something everyone has. Adults still struggle with it, let alone 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
I just see how the commercials now about anti-smoking have gone from, you shouldn't do it, to now they're giving you blunt examples of the dangers to your body.
Sure.
And I just, hopefully all the kids can be educated on, it's not just that you're not allowed to do it because of your age and you're in a school, but this is killing you. And it's not killing you after 30 days or 30 years, it's killing you from day one.
We know what happens to people that smoke cigarettes for 30 years. We haven't seen what happens to people who vape for 30 years because they haven't been around long enough yet.
Well, it's only going to be worse.
Correct.
'Cause the rate of nicotine going in is
Mhm.
far more than a cigarette.
My other question is, so it's brought to my attention that kids are vaping in the locker rooms either before or after school, after practice, or whatever. So is it possible for coaches or whoever to check on them?
Coaches do check on them. I received that same email, and I can tell you that, again, what I mentioned before, every time we have information as administrators, students are held accountable. They serve those chemical health violations. As this committee well knows, we don't discuss personnel matters publicly, but what I can tell you is that Mr. Leonard and I meet with coaches at the beginning of every season, at the end of every season as part of that. If you take a look, if we feel that a coach is not safely or adequately supervising the athletes in their charge, they're no longer employed by East Bridgewater Public Schools. And so I can say that in terms of a general policy and a practice that is there. And same as if there is ever any specific information that we have, we act on it. And it's not an easy thing to do, but there have been some public events that we have had to answer privately for behind closed doors in terms of how consequences were. And there were consequences levied against programs, athletes, some of them related to chemical health, some of them related to other factors. Bluntly, it was not a popular decision, but it was the right decision. And it was something that we did, and it was something that we followed. And we, when we heard that there was a concern on the sideline, I picked up some of my own children and brought them to Abington last weekend. And we were on those, not in the stands, on the sideline. Like, we were there. And we were pleased to announce that the other fans that were there also on Friday night, I think it was Friday night, the athletes, many of them, the students, had athletic competitions coming later on in the weekend, and everybody was on their best behavior. So, pleased with that, too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing maybe to share at a later time is EB Coalition. We do a survey every year of students, so that's part of the responsibilities of the grant. And it talks about students' usage with alcohol, marijuana, vaping. It's anonymous, but it also asks them about their perceptions, and their perceptions are usually higher than the reality. So they think their parents' perception of the dangers, it's amazing that they think parents are more concerned if they drink as opposed to marijuana. Their perceptions of peers using vape marijuana is higher than what they're reporting as their usage. So, you know, that's another thing that we deal with is students' perceptions of how how abundant it is in the schools, and whether it's students talking about it versus actually seeing it happening too. So dealing with that piece too.
I think also the perceptions of the community sometimes can get a little bit embellished. I had a conversation with a parent last week, and the three topics that were discussed, it would make this place seem like an out-of-control war zone. And I know that to be true at all. And, you know, I provided some information, but for the most part, I think people need to call the school. And not to give you guys more to do, but if they're hearing things on Facebook or in the town that just sound ridiculous,
Always prefer
give you
to.
guys a call and just get clarification on that, because it's probably not as bad as you're hearing. It's probably embellished and some misinformation in there, and we can address that together.
Please.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was a long minute.
I'll try to be more brief on the other topics.
I'll try to help with less questions.
We did talk about it, so.
Thank you.
Of course.
We have, next up, we have our district, well, I can't say that 5 times fast, district wellness plan by Dr. Gina Williams.
Great, and I'll go quick. So there's 3 things within your agenda. First is the agenda and then the meeting minutes of our first wellness advisory meeting that was held in October. And then the packet is our actual wellness policy and plan. So just to kind of give you some background on that, about 4 or 5 years ago, the state had required that all districts need a local wellness policy. And a plan was put in place. It was submitted to the state. They kind of sat dormant until just last year. The state reached out to all school districts and put them into one of two categories. Either you have a good plan, now we want to support you with a coach who will help you with implementing, or you need a better plan and you'll have a coach to help you to generate that plan. So we got put into tier 2. They felt the plan that we had submitted to the state was comprehensive and fulfilled the state, federal requirements. So we were partnered with a coach, a dietitian who came out for this first meeting we had in October, and we started working on an evaluation of our wellness plan. And looking at all the components we had within our wellness plan, and that takes into account nutrition education, it takes into account our meal program, any competitive snacks, beverages that we use for fundraising opportunities or before and after school activities. It takes into account our physical education that we provide, and then it also has optional wellness. It might amaze you that mental health is not a requirement on the state or federal level to be in a plan, but certainly we've included it in our plan as well. So we're at the phase now where we're going through our actual plan, looking at all of our action steps to make determinations as to where are we at with them. Are we in full implementation? Are we in partial? Or have we not implemented enough? We're also making determinations as to if we're not fully implementing it, what have those barriers been, and then setting priorities for the year. So we'll meet 4 times over the year. Today, during professional development, one of the sessions I met with all the physical education teachers, health teachers, and guidance counselors, and I had them look through it as well, just so that we can make some determination as to where we want to prioritize our action steps. So we'll meet again, I think we're meeting next week, the committee. The committee's made up of teachers, nurses, administrators. We have Mrs. Pennington as our school committee rep, who's been on since we created the plan back in 2019, as well as a community member at large, who works in the industry of health and wellness. So we'll meet 4 times over the year. We'll come back to the committee with our recommendations for what we're prioritizing for this year, and then annually need to revisit the policy and the action steps to make sure that we're getting to a point where we're fully implementing all the regulations. One in particular where we are falling short, and we'll probably continue to fall short until major changes are made, if that's even possible, but the amount of minutes they're expecting students to have physical education in a week. I believe it's 150 minutes a week at the elementary level and 225 minutes a week at the high school level. So we're striving to get as close as we possibly can, and I know there's conversations happening at the building levels to increase that. Certainly, we'd like to also account in that at the elementary level, when students are at recess, opportunities for physical movement breaks during core content times, and us factoring that in to get us closer to those minutes. Because certainly, for students to have that much physical education in a week, either we need to increase the school day or eliminate other things that we're doing in the school day, so.
How does the increased time for physical activity or physical education affect the time on learning? Does it affect the time on learning?
So that would be part of our time on learning. That is considered, all of our specials are part of our time on learning.
That's good.
It's really just, where do we pull that time from to get more time? So, one of the things we had a really good conversation about how teachers can embed it right within the content area. Certainly there's opportunities for physical movement while students are learning in the content areas. And if we can increase that, then we can feel good about the movement that students are getting. The other thing that was talked about today is looking at how students are able to waive out of physical education. We've had waivers in the past, and making sure that we limit those for reasons that are very specific to, students accessing certain other academic classes, but really prioritizing that few and far between are waiving out of their physical education classes. Maybe last year or this year, in 11th and 12th grade, they now have more customized PE classes, so students can choose yoga or walk for fitness, so it's not always the typical education class. It could be more geared towards a healthier lifestyle as opposed to volleyball, things that, students may not have an interest in. So the PE teachers at the junior, senior high school will really be looking to see, does that reduce the number of students who are looking to waive out of physical education, knowing that they're choosing courses that are more suited to what they want to be as lifelong healthy and well people. So more to come on that, but just to let you know, that the plan was last updated in 2019, so that's what we're working on for this year.
I imagine the challenge of trying to get students 45 minutes of gym class every day in a pretty tight schedule is going to be severe. Could we maybe work with the YMCA again? I know we've had success in the past, maybe build a program where they get like a 75% off their membership, and after school programs, they can build teen leagues. I mean, they're always open to new programs there.
Yeah, and certainly, even increasing at the district level, opportunities for before and after intramurals program, club sports, a lot of the conversation
program, I
today.
think?
I'm sorry.
Box program they used to have at the schools.
Right.
That was a
Yep.
good program for the
Yep.
kids. They love that.
Yeah.
We talked about getting some equipment, some more equipment where they have it on apps, where if kids want to come in and use the gym after school, they can go into an app, and the time would increase, that they did activity at nighttime, like at a high school, the gym.
Oh, like in the weight room?
Yeah, the weight room, and we talked about like a tonal machine where juniors and seniors could use upstairs, those
It's like a mirror, like the.
yeah, the
ones?
mirror,
Yeah.
the tonal, those rock climbing machines. We talked about putting some upstairs on the track upstairs. I mean, that might come as a recommendation as we go forward. John was looking, we're still looking at them. It's hard to get them, and we're just trying to figure out how to get them here. But like what you're saying, because kids do go to the gym by themselves. And if they could program into an app, you could use some of that time.
Yeah, so we have the platform app that's
Yeah.
mostly used in the wellness classes, coaches use it. You know, the other thing that comes with providing more opportunities after school for students is looking at, you know, a late bus or opportunities so that students can access it even if they don't have the transportation available to them, so. Will come with lots of
Quick
recommendations.
question for you about the people on it, on the committee.
Yes.
I noticed that there's the student ones are blank. the-
Yes.
right. So I guess there's two parts, why they're blank, but also, can it be shifted so it's not just student athletes that are reps, but it's students in general? Like, why was it, I'm sure it was just at some point pigeonholed into the athlete part?
Right,
It seems
so,
like it eliminates a bunch of people.
So when we did the plan back in 2019, Mr. Leonard had student ambassadors who were athletes, student athletes. They were responsible for a lot of the promotion to the rest of the student body. They went to a lot of the MIAA trainings. So they were sort of representatives to infusing a lot of the healthy decision-making into the school building. It's blank right now because the students from the previous plan graduated. The recommendation was for students not to sit through these first couple of meetings where we're prioritizing what we want to focus on, bring them in once we have that priority list so that they can help us work on those initiatives. So we even talked about in the past, they were upperclassmen, but we thought maybe we start with 9th and 10th graders so that we can keep them for multiple years and building that capacity across a number of years as opposed to turning over students. We were turning over students every year because we were bringing upperclassmen. But certainly to your point, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be athletes, you know, as long as we're choosing students who will help to promote healthy lifestyles for our students. But what else will come into play is, you know, what's being served in the cafeteria and helping us to develop alternatives for fundraisers and not selling cupcakes and candy bars. I know they're big sellers, though. So yes, so you will see student names get added as we get a little bit further along in the process.
I have one question. So this obviously focuses a lot on nutrition and physical activity, and I noticed there is a mental health section. Are there plans to kind of beef that up a little bit?
Yeah, so what's in there is just the bullets right now. So a
Yep.
lot of the work that was done today with the guidance counselors is actually putting specific action steps under each one of those areas. And talking about what it looks like at the central school versus at the Mitchell School versus at the junior, senior high school. And a lot of the conversation revolved around having regular opportunities to talk about what they're doing at each school so that we have some succinct, consistent way of working with students. You know, even like at the Mitchell School, they talk about Rachel's Challenge, and Mrs. Kallenberg was here today, and she said, you know, that is something that can be done at the junior, senior high school level, and even what would we be doing on a more elementary level to get that consistency going forward? Because there's a lot of things done in isolation right now, not necessarily building from one school to the next. So you'll see, as I keep bringing the plan back to you, how that's building over the year as each of them are looking at their areas. You're welcome.
You guys are going to get sick of me tonight, I can tell you that. So included in the packet is the report that I received on May 18th of last school year, May 18th, 2022. So the next report is due February 1st. And I thought what would be more helpful was to just kind of have a conversation on what has transpired, particularly this year, that is going to be included in the report that is going to be drafted. And clearly, once that gets near its final stages, I'll be sharing that in writing. So my plan for today, if it works, is to just follow through that second list of bullet points that's in there with some of the recommendations of the work that is continuing. And I would encourage the committee to please interrupt me at any point with any questions of anything that might be going on.
Can I already do that?
Please.
Can I clarify that the part you're sharing, since everybody can't see it, is like
Yes.
the action items that we
Yes.
were asked to continue
Yes.
to work on?
Yes,
Okay.
so without the report being available to the community, we did get credit for some things that we are continuing to do well, and it wasn't that it's, but it was more along the lines of, please continue to do X, Y, and Z. So those are the recommendations. The first is providing evidence that curriculum is designed to ensure all students can practice and achieve the vision of a graduate. So several bullet points, the work that this building has done. Ms. Fisher is in the audience right now. She's going to be speaking a little bit later. She and I actually presented together at MassQ last month around the work, not just that is being done with the leadership team in this building, but how we're integrating and utilizing technology to make it meaningful and effective change for our staff, so it does not just feel like something else that's being done to them. Included in there's a lot of work around developing rubrics that are going to be used to measure. And truthfully, one area, the rubric utilization has been slightly delayed from its original timeline because there's so much additional work that is happening around effective grading practices, which I'll get to in a moment, that rather than doing two of the things differently, we're pairing them together because there's something authentic that teachers care about, are putting their work in, and not the vision of a graduate isn't authentic, because it is, but this is something that we're pairing it with the grassroots work that's already going on, which frankly is going to make it more authentic, more practiced, and more lived. So that's still happening. It's just been slightly delayed because of it. There's going to be a little bit of messy work that's involved because as we start coming up with these rubrics, we've realized if we wait and we talk about each one of these 5 C's, communication, collaboration, all of those things, if we wait until everything is perfectly designed before it gets implemented, bluntly, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be rolled. So we're going to get there. Then we're going to start rolling it out. We're going to start recording and gathering this data, and we will need to calibrate a little bit and tweak and make sure that communication doesn't just fall to the English teachers and collaboration doesn't just fall to the science teachers, those types of things. And there was a lot of work that was being done today in our professional development session, specifically around collaboration and critical thinking. Mr. Taylor has been one of the people at the forefront of this work since he has been here in the district, and he was leading teachers, and today's PD was designed specifically around how to use the content that every teacher already has as a vessel to measure and communicate just different ways that you collaborate and different ways that you think critically, and to take those ideas and piggyback them right into their classes as early as tomorrow. So there's some of the work that's happening there. I'm just going to pause after each bullet in case there's any questions. Like I said, interrupt, and if I don't hear anything, I'll just keep going. To ensure that all teachers are consistently and intentionally improving their instructional practices by examining student work. There are 2 of the bullets that we're focusing on more than anything else, and this is one of those 2 big ones that we have. I'm really proud of the work that this school is continuing to do, staff, students, everybody. In an effort to make our focus on data more meaningful and more manageable, we've actually moved away over the last year or 2 from mid-year and final exams. And some people said, well, if you're being charged with data, why are you moving away from things that give you data? We want it to be authentic. Finals are often graded at the end of the year, and then through no one's fault, everybody's leaving in June. There's not an opportunity there, and I think I've spoken in front of this group before. Everyone from when we were in school to our students now goes into a major assessment like that saying, okay, what do I need to keep my blank?
Yep.
I need an 86 to keep my A, and that's all. The learning is not authentic. The learning is not meaningful, and we want to replace that with things that are more meaningful. And quite frankly, teachers should and can speak to a student's level of mastery before June or before that. You don't need a final exam to tell you if they're getting it or if they're not getting it or what is there. Some of the work that's being done and collected in, oh, of course.
So is the final exam optional for by teachers, or is it like a definitely no?
As a building, we do not have the expectation that final exams are there. There used to be a spot on the report card where the final exam counted for 10% of the grade. That is gone. However, if a teacher determines that a summative assessment is valuable, We support that, and it very well could be. It might take the form of a capstone project. It might take the form of a debate. It could take the form of a paper and pen test. Those are pretty rare, but that could be the case. The only expectation that we have put forth as an administration is it does need to be consistent among classes. We can't have one geometry teacher give a final and another geometry teacher not.
So as a team, they make that decision?
Yes, in conjunction with administration, with lead teachers, and that is happening consistently across the board. There is a lot of work being done around common assessments, and that was gathered at the end of last year, and then that is being looked at, that is being examined, that's there. Additionally, we have iReady, which there's been a lot of focus right now. That's in 7th and 8th grade. For our students, that's not new, but we're bringing that up into 7th and 8th grade. And even just in the conversations that we have around teaching and learning and observations, the most basic question we would ask of any teacher: what is it that you're working on with your students? Are they getting there? And how do you know? Why or why not? That's the formative assessment that NEASC wants us to drive and wants us to be talking about. It's happening. We just need to capture it and accurately put it in there. I will be blunt that the biggest obstacle that we have, and you will see woven throughout the report, is our current schedule. Our Bell schedule, we as a building, with the exception of 7th and 8th grade, do not have common planning time. We do not have the opportunity for 3 different geometry teachers, a biology teacher, whatever, to sit down and say, this is happening in my class, this is happening in your class, are you seeing it, are you not? We understand that that's a need. There's a lot of work that's happening, there's a lot of discussion that's going on. That's going to be the topic of this week's ILT meeting that's scheduled for Thursday afternoon. But that's something that's there. If we can get as a building to a schedule that allows for that, it will take everything else that we're working on and propel it far forward.
Because then that's also when you would capture data?
It's when we would capture data or when we would have the opportunity to analyze data. As an example, right now, teachers are saying, I have the data in my classroom. I can take a look at it, but I don't have the opportunity, or as much opportunity as I would like, that's a more accurate statement, to talk to my colleagues and see, are you seeing it? Are you not? iReady is phenomenal. It does a lot of that work for us, and it's really valuable and it's really helpful, but teachers need that time. They also need the guidance, and that falls to us to say, this is what we're looking for, and these are the directions that we're looking to go, but with that time, whether it's analyzing this data, moving this forward, teaching and learning is do so meaningfully at a time that works for them, compare students and drive things forward, then things are really going to start flowing.
And if you spend that time creating these rubrics and you can't come together and run those rubrics and talk about what needs improvement is versus an exceptional, then all that work.
It's a common assessment that isn't common.
Yeah.
Or isn't commonly addressed or analyzed. You're exactly right. The opportunities for cross-disciplinary learning and authentic learning opportunities, we just continue to make strides. Early college is now up and running. We're very excited that we've got 1 class that's running. We're going to have 2 classes that are running in the spring semester. Our fire academy is set. We have our 2 students that are pioneering that. The police academy is growing. Superintendent Cove hasn't had a chance to fill me in on a meeting that I know she had today with the police and fire chief. I'm looking forward to that, as well as looking forward to expanding the opportunity for internship opportunities, almost something like a senior projects kind of class as we look towards what students actually need. That's a little bit farther out, but that's something that we're looking at too. How do we take that, make it authentic, and give students the opportunities to learn cross-curricular, disciplinary, out in the community? There's a lot of potential there. The next bullet, going back to data, this is our other second big one: collecting, disaggregating, analyzing data. We had data meetings, that was part of it today. The 3 principals and 3 assistant principals met with Dr. Williams and Mr. McFarland today to talk about what data meetings happening, what's happening, what's not, what does it look like, how can we improve. As a building, we gave professional practice goals and student learning goals to all staff and wrote them in an effort to take something off their plate to make it as easy as possible for teachers to be focusing on data. There's a ton of work going on with effective grading practices. Every English teacher in the building 9 through 12, as well as representatives from science and social studies and math department, are looking at this new grading practice, which really lends itself to this. There was so much momentum that I gave up our staff meeting time in November so that these colleagues could present to their colleagues. And again, it's gonna, if you ever work in a school, it's gonna be far more authentic. I don't care how, it will be better received teacher to teacher than administration to teacher saying, this is what we're doing and why. Selfishly, we're looking forward to this a little bit. With teaching and things like that, Mr. Taylor and I are actually both going to be teaching a class moving forward. We're each going to be teaching a math class. So I will have personally the opportunity to really put my money where my mouth is and look at what I perceive as the inequities in student learning with the students who are going to be in front of me every other day. Mr. Taylor's going to be doing the same thing now.
Bold of you to confess out loud.
Well, it's out there now, so
Did you bring a whole handful? There's a lot that are out.
They're running out like every meeting.
Keep a box on the shelf.
Anybody else out over there?
Yeah. Becky.
Probably because I talked so much.
You can pass it down if you want to.
My microphone turned off. It was like, you need to stop.
You're done. Cut off.
I'm ready.
I'll probably do it though. That hurts my nose.
So we'll have the opportunity to take a look at that. Improving access and opportunity to all courses, elective, heterogeneously grouped classes. We're now into the second of our two phase of removing prerequisites for courses in the program of studies to ensure that we have as many opportunities for students to challenge themselves as possible. Again, we're not going to take a 7th grader and put them into pre-calculus just because they think it would be fun or they want to, but we are going to be removing those prerequisites and focusing on what students and families and teacher recommendations look for. Very proud of that. Our early college class that's staffed, those are not all AP students that are in there. There are some students that are in there that this is really their opportunity to challenge themselves. We have some students that are in this class that did not think that they were going to be attending college. Community college, anything like that. That was not their post-secondary planning. And they're earning college course right now. We want to continue to build on that. And that's our upperclassmen. We're expanding that so that juniors will have the opportunity, hopefully, to take some of those classes second semester this year. We're taking a look at our enrichment block in grades 7 and 8 and how to better service the needs of our 7th and 8th grade students. Later, talking about staffing needs that we have, and there's already some ideas in the works in terms of recalibrating or reallocating staffing positions so that we can offer more electives, which knocks hits 3 or 4 different areas. It increases opportunity, it increases heterogeneity, and it allows for more flexibility in the schedule so we're not locked in and constricted. The other 2 bullets, I think we can talk to a little bit later, a little bit more detail later. They're specifically around, community actions that are in place, talking about capital improvement projects. We're going to talk about capital improvement that has been passed at town meeting to update the needs of this facility. Budgetary approvals, and those are just really more reporting on the work that happens with building administration, Superintendent Legault, Assistant Superintendent Williams, Mr. Shea, and really just capturing that work there.
And these are classes they can take during the day for college classes?
The early college, yep, they meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 o'clock to 10:50. Yep, you're right here.
That's excellent.
That's some of the pictures that you see behind you from the sociology professor who's brought those in.
And the great thing is those college classes you're counting them as AP classes too, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
So the NEAS question of the night,
Yes.
do you think you'll get accredited?
I think that's what everybody,
Glad you asked it.
because I think that's what everybody wants to know. What do you think?
There's a lot of work
Gambler in
here.
me doesn't want to publicly, issue any guarantees or
Well, you're
lay
teaching math,
handicapped
so I think it
odds.
works
I mean, we're putting everything that we can, but we're really confident of the work that is going on. We're proud of what is happening. The town, the staff, the students, people are really stepping up. And quite frankly, if there is something that is needed, yes, I hope and I think that we will. I think that we will, I'm confident that we will. And if there's an issue there that's beyond, like we've identified, our current bell schedule is limiting in many ways. And we're being told that there are many things that if we were to make a tweak or a change that would enable us to check this off the list. So if there's a high school principal who's in front of you in a couple of months talking about a need for a change in a bell schedule, he may bring with him the NEASC report to talk about here's the reason why. But it's really, approaching that. And we remain in contact. I can say that NEASC has been very helpful. I know Ms. Legault has her own contacts there. They're very helpful. They don't set it up as a gotcha. I think part of it was the first couple of years there was some inconsistent reporting in our 10-year cycle. The fact that it's still the same people that we know who to reach out to and how to connect. Yes, I think we'll get there.
Can you briefly describe the timeline for NEASC? Because I know it's a lengthy timeline, but there's it's
Yep.
periods.
So the timeline right now is that the 5-year, so last year's report was an anomaly based on our accreditation. This year's report due February is a pretty standard 5-year report where we need to report. And then at that point, they may issue, and correct me if I'm wrong, they will hopefully grant us our accreditation, tell us what it is that we need to continually be looking for and working on. It's not as if they completely go away, but then before we know it, it's a couple of years, we're gonna have to start gearing up for the whole process all over again with another 10,
I think we'll be in a better position.
Absolutely, definitely.
So for fear of beating a dead horse, we are currently on a warning, which is why we had that
Correct.
interim report last year, right?
Yes.
And the hope is that that warning will come off after all of the work you've done with this report at the 5-year?
That is our hope. The opening, and I know the community doesn't have this, but the opening paragraph says, until all concerns have been satisfactorily resolved, we remain on warning status for the reasons listed below. I feel confident that with that list that we have just run through, as we compile, the biggest question that I'm going to be asking is how much evidence does NEASC need? And that's really, at this point, I feel like we've outlined, we know what we're going to say, and that's my work for the next month or two, is to reach out and like, we've got proof, do you want it? Are they gonna take our word for it as we put it in? And they actually needed less than I thought in the 4-year report, which was great. Now I have learned to ask what sort of, because there are artifacts that are attached, the rubric work, the presentation, the mask, all of those things we can upload in support and see where we're at. And those are the questions that will be taking place in December, in January. We know what we're talking about. What do you need as evidence and proof?
And are they coming for a site visit at all, or is it just, we're just sending in this report? I didn't think so, but okay, cool.
Nope.
That's nice.
Yes. It's a surprise to me if they are. So, no, I don't think that's part of the plan.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Strategic plan. Strategic plan.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about that before.
Strategic
Yeah.
plan. It goes first.
Okay. Strategic Plan 2, Strong Instruction, Gina Williams, Aaron Fisher, Bill Clements,
Up
and
here.
Mac Paquette.
Aaron, you take my seat. Matt, you can take
All right, so as everyone's getting settled, I'll just refresh your memory on the strategic plan. We have 3 prongs within this strategic plan. Social emotional wellness is our number 1. You heard from the folks that work on that subcommittee at the October meeting. So now the 4 of us are part of the subcommittee for strong instruction. I think you have in your packets the strategies and action steps, so we'll just kind of speak to where we're at right now. I'll share with you a couple of those first bullets and our overarching curriculum review cycle, which I know you've heard, but I'll reiterate for those listening at home, as well as how we plan and develop professional development for our staff. And then we'll move to Mrs. Fisher, and she'll talk more specifically about the supports we provide for teachers to enhance their classroom instruction. And then Mr. Clements will talk about, and it'll be a little bit repetitive, but he'll talk about the specific things that are happening on a building level with strong instruction. And then Mr. Paquette's gonna wrap it all up and talk about how all those prongs work together, the curriculum, the professional development we provide, the Tier 1 instruction, and just to refresh your memory, when we talk about tiered levels of instruction, Tier 1 is what all students get. And if you think of it as a pyramid, our intent is that at least 80% of our students are in that Tier 1 instruction, although 100% of our students receive Tier 1. But then there's students who need a little bit more support, and that's considered Tier 2 instruction. So they get the classroom instruction from the teacher, and then they get some intervention from a provider. And then Tier 3 is our most intense level, and we always hope for that to be like kind of the top of the pyramid, because that's the smallest percentage of students, shooting for about 5% of our students. And that means they need their Tier 1 instruction from their classroom teacher, they need some Tier 2 small group intervention, and they even need a Tier 3 level of support, so that they're getting supports on 3 levels throughout their day. As we kind of work through this, you'll hear a little bit about the district perspective, as well as then paring it down to the building level. So just to remind you, we have a 6-year curriculum review cycle. We actually are starting the cycle over again this year. We are now in year 7, so we're starting again, looking at curriculum for science. Nice to say that everything that we've been using hasn't been reviewed longer than 6 years. I know in years past, we've had materials and resources that were decades old. And with this cycle, we're also looking at how culturally responsive our curriculum as well. So, especially for teachers who teach multiple content areas at the elementary level, it'd be very difficult and daunting for them to audit all of their curriculum. So we're taking it as each year in the curriculum review cycle comes up. So certainly looking at science, looking at all their resources and materials, and making sure that all students have equitable access and all students are seeing themselves reflected in the resources. And then as far as professional development, we have our Professional Development Academy. It's representative of staff from all 3 buildings. So when we meet on a monthly basis and plan our professional development, we look at the needs across all buildings and looking at what teachers need for support around the curriculum materials that they have and what supports teachers need around the instructional practices. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Fisher to talk more specifically about that.
Hi, I'm Erin Fisher. I'm the Technology Integration Facilitator for the district. In this role, I have the privilege of supporting teachers with integrating technology into their classrooms. And under Strong Instruction, our strategic plan, technology really plays a role with inclusive practice and making sure all of our children have access to our curriculum. I go into classrooms as well as work with our PD Academy and our UDL Academy, which has been implemented for the past few years. And what we do is we work with teams of teachers and we show them ways that they can use various scaffolds to make learning accessible for all of our students. Even today, I was running sessions on universal design for learning and inclusive practices with our special areas, as well as EL strategies with our EL coordinator, and how tech tools can facilitate that access for all of our students, and as well as families. We've even discussed how we can help our families in the community access our school and our curriculum through meetings with tech tools and how we can have those tech supports in play for them, such as translation on their mobile device, spoken content on their mobile device. I work with teachers as well on Parent Square and how to use that for culturally responsive communication. You'll see parent-teacher conferences came out for Central School through Parent Square, through Mitchell. They'll be coming out. I'll be working with teachers on that next week. And so that's the role I play in terms of strong instruction and using accessibility tools and technology to make learning more inclusive and accessible for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And now Mr. Clements will share with you how that looks on a building level.
So, one of the things that I had mentioned earlier is around grading and instructional practices. So just talking about that for a second, and technology is interwoven throughout all of that, but just as an example, teachers are looking at what is it that they want students to know and how can they meaningfully measure and give them feedback, because kids can learn without grades. Kids can't learn without feedback. And so with a lot of front-heavy work, there's some really meaningful conversations around looking at grading things as not yet mastered, proficient, which is actually done intuitively, the central school already, if you remember those central school report cards. But with that work and, you know, getting students to that level of understanding, gone are the questions of, well, I need 2 more points to turn my 88 into a 90. What do I need for those 2 more points? And the conversations are actually coming up, well, how can I show you that I know this? What else do you need? Because every teacher can speak to what, generally speaking, an A-level understanding is, a B-level understanding is, a C-level understanding is. But if you're talking about the difference between a 97 and a 95, does that mean somebody was like hungry when they were grading their 12th test on a Saturday afternoon as opposed to, and it's really being met with a lot of positive momentum, and it's bringing in. And the other thing that's nice for all the families and all the teachers in town, as I said, the fact that it's happening in every English class and every student takes English every year, no one is the point of the spear anymore. This work has been out. We had pictures of snowplows up on our staff meeting because the colleagues are getting out in front of that. But that is some instructional practice that factors everything in that Dr. Williams and Ms. Fisher have just mentioned, but talks about a practical application in terms of what it looks like in the class. And if we had more cool common planning time, then we could, again, we would really be humming.
And it's all these things that become uncovered as we start to do this work. And even as, you know, Mr. Clements mentioned about having those conversations. So now we're looking at, like, how do we build that conversation time in? What are we talking about in those conversations? And how those conversations are going to help a teacher better plan for the needs of their students. And as we talk about that tiered instruction, one of the biggest challenges for staff is how to meet the diverse needs of students within their classrooms, knowing that, you know, they're all on different levels. Certainly they can be teaching, you know, the grade level curriculum, but now how do you build in time to fill those gaps in and teach those prerequisite skills that some students may have missed or may need more reinforcement for? And how about those students that have already acquired those skills and don't need to be sitting through that? And how we can build a schedule and build structure and routines within the classroom to account for all of that. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Paquette to kind of just, in general, kind of talk about how we're using all of this to move our instruction forward.
Yeah, it's, when we were reviewing our strategic plan and primarily our 3 goals, and of course, listening to Dr. Williams and Aaron and Bill tonight, it really brought to the forefront that what is at the center of specifically strong instruction here in East Bridgewater. And at the center of it, and listening to them speak tonight and then reviewing this and jotting down some notes, there's no doubt in my mind that what is at the center of strong instruction for us is a deeply authentic, deliberate, purposeful, individualized, and personal instruction. Not just blanket approach, but a deeply individualized, personalized level of instruction. So whether we're talking about professional development on social education related topics, acceleration academies, or curriculum review cycle, we're talking about individualized, personalized instruction. Or as Aaron pointed out, if we're talking about assisted technology options, or implementing UDL principles and strategies, or implementing inclusive practices, we're really talking about individualized, personal instruction. And then, of course, in Bill talking about the feedback and grading and assessment, it's no longer done with these larger, broad strokes. It's done on a very individualized, personal level. And I think that's the key. That's going to be the most powerful. And in fact, if we step back, and I was listening to the presentation on goal number 1, social emotional wellness, at the center of that very goal as well is it's a deeply personalized, individualized goal. It's about the social, emotional well-being of each and every single individual. And our instruction is about the education, the instruction for each and every single individual. And when we talk about assessment coming up, it's about assessing based on individual, deeply personal assessments. And I think that's what sets this district apart from most, is really that's that DNA to instruction, to social emotional well-being, to our practices of assessment. And that makes me proud.
He's our newest recruit to this team. And so as we talk a little bit more, and as you hear from the group that works with assessment, you know, that's kind of where the conversation starts. You know, first we need to gather some information about our students in order for us to be able to figure out, like, where do we need to go? It's got to be based on, like, what are they ready for? And a lot of our conversation this morning was about creating those opportunities to have those conversations one-on-one with staff, which, again, it comes down to time, but it's crucial for teachers to have an opportunity to sit with their building administration and to talk about the students who are in front of them. You know, it's very difficult to say, you know, you just need to meet everybody's needs. You need to just work with all their individual, you know, strengths, all their individual areas of weakness. But as we work with Universal Design for Learning, what can we do? What can we put in place that is going to be accessible for everyone without sitting there saying, like, I need to change this for you and I'm going to make this for you. Let's design our lessons so that then students are getting what they need just based on the initial instruction in the way it's been set up. And a lot of that comes down to flexible groupings that they're creating, and keep coming back to looking at the data that's being collected and how you're using that to drive your instruction, as opposed to giving a test and then saying, okay, now we're going to go on to the next chapter, just as you would even if you didn't give the test, using that information to really help you to make those decisions. So that's where we're at with strong instruction. And like I said, when you hear from the folks about assessment, they'll be talking about how we then get that formative information from our students to then come back around to the instruction and how we make decisions about what they're learning and when they're learning it.
I picture this so almost like easier, so forgive my word if it's not, in that Central and Mitchell school years where they're used to these small groups and you pull out and they have an activity while you're working with another, and right, like how that looks. And then I'm thinking of my own high school experience and sitting in a classroom and the teacher's lecturing and everyone's looking, and it seems foreign to picture what that looks like at a high school classroom. So is there, at this point, an example of how like a high school classroom is showing this or demonstrating this?
Yes, so there are all kinds of different stations activities
Okay.
that you might walk in, and there could be different ways for someone to research different, and the French Revolution. So you can have, there's a lot of different student-centered activities, whether it's from assigning different roles of the different estates. So you might have one member of the first estate who's the king and just lets everybody else fight and then just comes in and does whatever he or she wants to do. There can also be ways to demonstrate different research components to kind of go through and jigsaw and talk about, we're going to do different groups, you've got to research different things here, go back, talk about that, and then report back together as a group. There are still some aspects of that sage on the stage mentality of somebody who stands up and stand and deliver and lecture, but that's not best practices with all of the work that's happening at the UDL academies and things like that. And there's so much happening now that staff are popping up like, oh yeah, I saw this, I did this here, and here's a great activity that might try there, you might want to try there, you might want to try there. Even if it's something teachers are very cognizant of, they may have the opportunity to introduce a new concept, talk, teach, demonstrate, model for the first 15 or 20 minutes. Then there's opportunity to practice, float, go around. A well-designed lesson will have opportunities for the kids that get it the first time, and they'll be there.
Yeah.
Here's how they move forward.
Gotcha.
For the kids that aren't, here's some scaffolds that are put in place. So there's a lot of different pockets and ways that you would see that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Thank you.
No, they're
Thanks.
great.
Stay there.
Sure. Are we ready for MCAS now?
I just know that it sets us up for this.
Next up, we have MCAS.
So, I do have a packet, and Dr. Williams is going to speak to it, and we have the principals here. We were at, we had our principals meeting, which we have a couple times a month, where either we go to their buildings and sit with them, or they come and sit with us here and talk about what's going on in schools, not only issues, but we talk and we focus on whether it's an assessment, whether it's in strong instruction, whether it's social, emotional well-being. Yesterday, we talked about the MCAS scores, and I just want to just preface this by talking about MCAS for a moment. On September 10th, or on September 29th, October 10th, on September 29th, the commissioner released a press release. I sent it out throughout the district on Parent Square. I sent it to all the school committee, and I just wanted to highlight a few things that the commissioner said on MCAS so people understand where we are with MCAS and what we're doing and how we're getting there. The new generation MCAS came out right before COVID and into COVID, and so we really didn't have that opportunity to have that direct instruction where kids were home. Results on the spring 2022 MCAS tests were mixed, with math and science scores improving since 2021 and English language arts scores declining. Overall results when compared to pre-pandemic levels show continued need for improvement. This is coming from the Commissioner of Education. These results show that it may take a few years for students to recover academically from COVID-19. Many students need more time learning, whether it is in the form of tutoring, acceleration academies, early literacy, after-school programs, or summer learning. That's come from the Education Secretary, James Pizer. As you know, last year we started acceleration academies. This year we are continuing. Dr. Williams has applied for a new grant. We just signed it, I think, a week ago. Hopefully we'll see those funds and that grant opportunities for February and April vacation acceleration academies, and hopefully something in the summer as well, so that we continue to spiral and work with students who have weaknesses, or work with students who have strengths, or work with just any student that would like to be here, and we'll base it off the information that we receive through assessments and teacher recommendation. The departments also help schools carve out additional instruction time. Acceleration academies, voluntary intensive programs held during vacation weeks existed before the pandemic, but have grown to include summer sessions too. The department has committed approximately $1 million in state funds and $16 million in state from ESSER funds for acceleration academies. Prior to this, we had always talked about having acceleration academies or having summer programs to enrichment for students. We didn't have the funding at that point, really pre-pandemic. Now that ESSER has supported that and we find ourselves in a different way, we have now supported acceleration academies. And I'm sure that if Mrs. Linehan was here tonight, who was our coordinator for those programs, could speak to those acceleration academies and how well the students enjoyed them, and the teachers were engaged and the kids were engaged, and I'm sure Dr. Williams will touch upon that again. We know that with time and with the right supports, our students can achieve and exceed their previous successes. And that comes from the Commissioner of Education. We also continue to work with teachers and districts to improve early literacy instruction and through deeper learning initiatives, make Massachusetts schools more relevant, engaging, and creative places to be a student or teacher. I jump on a couple of those things and those remarks that were made by the Secretary of Education, Pizer, and the Commissioner of Education, because everything that you've heard this evening is in line of what they're saying. We're not making excuses. We are not going backwards. We had a pandemic. We had sympathy. Now we have empathy, and we're working on spiraling in what we need to do and spiral up and scaffold and work on acceleration academies, work with enrichment programs, and continue to support students. There was a detailed MCAS results in there, but the last part of what the Commissioner had added was, when considering these year's results and how to compare them to previous years, it is helpful to remember that due to the pandemic, there were variations in how MCAS was administered over the last few years. If you remember, in 2019, full tests in grades 3 through 8 in high school. In 2020, there were no MCAS tests administered. In 2021, half tests in grades 3 through 8 and full tests in the high school. In 2022, full tests in grades 3 through 8 in high school. So the consistency of what we saw in the testing over the last 4 years has been inconsistent. And we know that with being consistent and committed into anything that we do, we'll continue to increase test scores and help students. Test scores are great, assessments are great. I'm not going to make excuses that we're midline or we may be behind in growth in some areas in grades 3 through 8. And in grade 10, we're right on the median of the state. However, I do want to make sure that people understand that it is one test, and it is, when we get the results, the students have already moved to another grade. So our teachers have to look at that. They have to assess that. The principals have to look at that. They haven't had the time, the principals, we talked about this yesterday, they haven't had the time to do item analysis with the teachers. Where did we fall short on some of our instruction in grade 4, and now the student's in grade 5? Do we go back and get that student and go back into those areas? What we did find, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Williams now, is that iReady, the assessment that we chose to support our students and to support the instructional strategies that our teachers use, is in line and is mirroring what we see on the MCAS results. And Dr. Williams will talk about that as well. We've got a couple of things, I can hand those out if you want, and we have some other, this is our states, and just the press release once again. And then the principals are here also to talk about the support that they're going to put in place.
Just as you're waiting for those, I mean, I think to reiterate, we're not refuting that our scores are not good in there. We're not satisfied with where they are. The challenging part is, as the superintendent said, is to use MCAS as our sole indicator for where we need to improve becomes challenging. When the results come in, those students have moved on to the next grade level, so you have teachers looking at results from their previous year's class. Isn't always indicative of their current class of students, but certainly we can look at trends, and we plan to look at trends to see, are there particular skills where, as a grade level, students are performing below the state average, and we certainly will focus on those. The packet that's being passed out to you right now is just going to show the correlation between the data we get from iReady and the data that we get from MCAS, because we need a type of diagnostic that we can work with over the course of the year so that we can be reflective in what students have mastered, we can be reflective in what they're ready to learn, and we can be reflective in what they may need some reinforcement in. So looking at the packet there, you'll see it's grades 3 through 3 through 6, I'm sorry, because 7 and 8 is their first year, but we will do this at the end of the year for grades 3 through 8, knowing we'll be doing iReady in all those grades. But just looking at 3 through 6, because they took iReady last year and they also took MCAS. You can see the percentage of students exceeding and meeting at the MCAS is very close, 1 percentage point different than how they performed on their spring iReady scores. Looking at the percentage of students who were partially meeting expectations on the MCAS, it was exactly the same or within 1 or 2 percentage points of how they performed on the iReady, as well as those students who were not meeting. So what it tells us is, looking at our iReady data, we can already plan for and see how students are going to be performing on their MCAS. So we need to use this data to inform our instruction. If you go to that first page was the ELA scores, the second page is the math scores. Very similar, within 1-2 percentage points. How the students performed on their iReady in the spring is how they performed on MCAS in the spring.
I see big differences in the proportion of students who are not meeting for grades 3, 5, and 6 between math and iReady. Any ideas? And it looks like it's not consistent, like iReady is not always overestimating or something. Any
So
thoughts
typically, if there is a difference, it's they've scored lower in iReady than they have on the MCAS. So if anything, that's just getting us more prepared for students who need that extra support as opposed to the other way around. We wouldn't want inflated iReady scores to then give us false hopes that they're going to be prepared for the MCAS. So when we saw those discrepancies, it works to our favor that we would be using intervention strategies with students based on their iReady and making sure that they're prepared for the MCAS, as opposed to the opposite. We would have been very concerned if their iReady scores were higher than their MCAS scores, because we might have thought that they don't need the supports.
Gotcha.
And then just to show you kind of what it looks like in the reports, the shaded section. So you'll see in the iReady, there's green with the black lines through it. That's just telling us that students have mastered the skills already, but green without the shading is what they're ready to learn. So really, only those shaded is the percentage of students who we would say would get proficient or exceeding proficiency on the MCAS. This is just another view of the spring. It's going to be very eye-opening when you see fall's results to see where kids are at, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge where students are at right now and the work that needs to be done. So that first page is spring results from the iReady report for both reading and math. And then the next page is how...
Can you tell us what the yellow and the red?
Yep. So we start getting into 1 year below grade level, 2 years below grade level, more than 2 years below grade level. So that's what the other codings would be.
So just to make sure, so then it's say grade 4, 28% of students are a year below grade level?
Yes.
Okay. Not okay, just I
No,
understand.
right, yes, understanding, yep. And those would be those students that are partially or not meeting, because
Right.
obviously the MCAS is testing mastery at that grade level.
Thank you.
Yep. The next one is the MCAS, and just how MCAS scores are reported with percentages in each of the categories. And all this that I'm showing you right now is on that front page. It's just showing how the reports are lined up. So the last 2 pages, and this is where we're at right now with staff, and this is going to show you K to 8, because we administer iReady K to 8. But this is where the conversations need to start. This is the fall data for our students. So you can see that that first column on the left are the students who performed proficient in the fall. So looking at kindergarten, 16% of the students, jumping down grade 3, only 2% of the students. So it's telling us, you know, how are they with that grade level standards and those grade level skills? So clearly they would typically be lower because it's the beginning of the year.
Okay, that's what so it's important, I think, to note, especially since there are people who can't necessarily see it. When you're looking at the spring iReady for, say, grade 3, when you look at the fall, you want to look at grade 4.
So when you look at the fall, you're looking at every kid in green is right where we would want them to be.
At the beginning
At the
of grade
beginning
4.
of, yes. So the green without the shading is they're ready, they've acquired all the skills that they needed in the previous grade, and now they're ready to acquire the skills for that grade level. So we could combine those 2 first columns and say those kids are now either they're there and we need to push them further, or they've got everything in place and they're ready. They're on target to be meeting the expectations of that grade level.
Okay.
So you can see right at the very top there. The shaded is, they're above grade level. That green is, they're right at the beginning of the year, they're early in that grade level, which is exactly where they should be.
Forgive my ignorance, but
Yep.
it says grade K, 68% of students are 1 grade level below in the fall. So is the presumption then that kids are walking into the first day of school and 70% of them are already behind?
So not behind, but they've acquired no skills at that grade level at the time. So they have no kindergarten skills. So it's not that they're behind, but they're
So that's kind of
coming in.
expected.
It's almost like a meeting expectations
Yes.
type of thing.
Right. So you'll see that there's none that are more than a grade level behind because they just started. So there's nothing to measure it by. But those students that are performing in the yellow, they are missing skills that would have them ready to start now learning the kindergarten skills.
So the yellow is more like, it's okay to be behind the beginning of the year, it's where you are at the
Right, so we're okay with yellow and green. It's red that's concerning, but then where they are on that continuum of yellow. You know, some are only a few points away from getting to the green, whereas others are closer to the red. And so the work to be done over the course of the year is to now shift those numbers to the left. And the way that we're going to be able to do that is figuring out, well, what are the exact skills that they don't have in place, so that we can continue to accelerate their learning on the grade level skills while filling in those missing pieces and those gaps.
And then this is where the individualized piece comes in, because teachers have access to see what students are, the time on spending on iReady, but also like where they're getting stuck on iReady.
Yep.
Where they're breezing through, whatever
Right.
it may look like.
Yes, so those things are all accounted for as well, you know, how fast they click through the test. Sometimes we ask students to retake the test, especially if we see that there's no validity there based on how quickly they went through. The other piece that's very telling is the MyPath, the individualized piece of that, and how much time. They have a recommendation that students are spending 40 minutes on that a week. And research has shown that students' MCAS scores went up on an average of 5 percentage points because of the amount of time that they were spending on the iReady over the course of each week. So these are all part of the data meetings and the conversations that need to happen from the building level administrator with the teachers, so that they can start looking at, like, okay, where should I focus my efforts, my attention? But also, like, what do I need for supports, too? Because, you know, it's easier to just say, like, okay, we want to move all this over. Well, how are we going to do that? What do we need for supports in the classroom? And whether it's resources, whether it's some intervention support. The other thing that we're working on is, you know, some coaches and having teachers within the district be part of, like, coaching and strategy. So when Mrs. Fisher was talking earlier, 5 members of our UDL coaching team have been trained as universal design coaches, so that then they can go into the classrooms. Mrs. Fisher comes at it more from a tech integration support, where the others are more about the practice of instruction.
So how might that approach differ for, I'm looking at grade 8, looking at both reading and math, where over 40% of that class is in the red in some level. So like, I guess I'm trying to think about, like, also like scaffolding those resources, right? We need a little bit, like, does that significantly change the approaches for the year? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so this is where we get into the tiered levels of support. So no longer is it enough that these students are getting that tier 1. How are we going to provide them with that tier 2, tier 3? And that's where looking at the schedule comes in. Like, how are we using our schedule as effectively, or the time within our schedule as effectively as we could be? Especially at the 7th and 8th grade, I think they're looking at those enrichment blocks and giving more time to concentrate on content-specific skills that students need.
There have been, just as one small example, there have been conversations where special education teachers have come up and have already identified and talking about other tiers of support and saying, look, even if a student's not on my caseload, if I were to come in during an enrichment block and work with this math and provide that additional level of support, now that this data is there and is visible, it's helping them to more readily identify where and how. And yes, sound teaching practices and repetition and scaffolding of the core concepts is only going to help to elevate, hopefully on a grander scale.
So, right now, that's not how enrichment is designed, right? Because the kids, they go to enrichment and they have a teacher and they learn, you know, certain things. So that would change how enrichment works in the 7th and 8th grade.
Potentially, yes, like when it was notified, and again, not to be
Right.
kind of like the bell schedule, but that was like something that came up, where the teacher said this could be an opportunity to utilize enrichment to another purpose. Yes.
So, I mean, the 8th graders, they're on a tight timeline to get to the point where they'll be able to pass the MCAS in 10th grade. Are we prepared to pivot in time to give them the resources they need to be successful in 10th grade with their MCAS scores? Because, we're talking about the bell schedule, we're talking about a lot of great ideas, but they all take time to implement, and they all take resources to implement. What are we doing now to help these kids be successful over time?
Right.
Because these are kids that are going to need a few years to catch up, and they don't have that kind of time.
Right. And, you know, the conversation, I mean, even when we have meetings with students who have learning disabilities, you know, we can never expect a student to gain more in a year than any other student. So students who are multiple years behind, yeah, that's going to take a while. Whereas students who have, you know, a year or less, then we should be able to make up that difference within that time. Also now adding in the academies that we're putting in place, looking at other ways that we can support students beyond the current content areas. So it will take time to close that gap. It's also looking at it like from the kindergarten level on, like what are we doing even earlier on, you know?
Right, and I like what this can do at the earlier grades. I just worry about the 8th graders and the 9th graders that we don't even have this data for. You know, they're on a tight timeline too. And I know, like, you're right, you can't expect kids to make up more than a year over the course of a year. And I worry, the acceleration academies are great, but they happen over school vacations. The kids need a break too. The kids burn out too.
So let me just interject. One of the things that we did put forth, and the principals can adhere to, tell you, look a little bit more, that any student that has an IEP, especially in grades K through 6, but in the 3 through 6, if they're during direct instruction of math, of English, of social studies, or science, the student is never removed into a resource room or a one-on-one situation. They are in with their peers inside the classroom for direct instruction, whether it is the one or the two teachers combining, or one teacher delivering the lesson, the other teacher supporting the lesson throughout walking through the class, or they partner the lesson and their lesson planning together. We have not done that to fidelity in this district for years. We were pulling kids out during direct instruction in the grade 4, while math instruction was going on. We would be pulling students out and saying, well, they just can't meet this expectation, so we'll catch them up out here. We found over the years, and our own edification on this, and redirecting ourselves, is that if students are inside the classroom with their peers, listening to the same instruction, their attainment will be better, and they will move forward. So that's one thing that the district has taken on this year, and that there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Everybody is in, and that is K through 12. Are there resource rooms? Are there enrichment classes? Are there times during intervention blocks the students may be separated and pulled out? Yes, but there is no longer any student being pulled out during direct instruction. If there is, let your principal know, and we'll address it. That's one. The intervention, we put in intervention teachers. This is the second year of intervention teachers since COVID, since we had the ESSER funds. We put in intervention down at 3 through 6. I'd like to push it over to Mr. Paquette, because we had this conversation the other day, one-on-one, that our growth, the growth that we will see from grades 3 through 6, by far will be the most that we will see in the district.
Right, but what are we doing for the 8th and 9th graders?
Right. I understand that, but I mean, if we have to get it down here in the 3 through 6. Once we get to 7 and 8, 7 and 8, they did not opt to do iReady last year. Am I correct on that?
This is the first year 7
We're going to
and
do
8
it this year.
doing iReady.
Right.
So we're driving our expectations. The district has not loosened up on their expectations. We continue to push our principals in that direction. I mean, he could jump on in 7, 8, 9, but I really think that we really need to support the 3 through 6, because if you look at this, students are getting into 7th and 8th grade, and they may be a little bit behind at that point. There's a lot of growth that we can expect at that 3 through 6 to help support the movement. But, I mean, both of you can talk. I'm thinking of 3 through 6 of the conversation that we had the other day about what you see as a former high school principal, and looking at what you're seeing now, and then what you're seeing 7, 8, 9. Sure. I get what I know what you're saying.
Right, I mean, it's great, because now we could hope that the 3 through 6 would be in better shape come 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, when it's, crunch time. But, I mean, that doesn't change the fact that we have kids in 8th and 9th grade that need the help as well, and what's the plan?
So there's a couple different entry points that I'm thinking about to answer what you're asking, and I think you can address both simultaneously, and it is in how personalized, for instance, the iReady program is. That's its whole design. It's the individual, is ready for whatever it is. And I don't say that lightly, as I stressed, because that's everything. If you have, for instance, groupings, you have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, well, anybody who's falling in Tier 2, let's say 60 students, they can be in Tier 2 for you can have 5 groups within Tier 2 that are struggling in 5 different skill areas. And so they would need individualized instruction that targets specifically those skills that those students need most attention with to go ahead and move them forward collectively with their classmates. So for instance, over at Mitchell, we have 90+% of the teachers who are using iReady data in their evaluative goals, in their professional practice goals, and in their student learning goals. So the data that's being generated out of iReady comes through, and they're going to say, I want this percentage of these students to reach this mark by the end, right, hypothetically, or not even hypothetically, an example. So when they have the results in front of them, it's so broken down to not only, there's instances where iReady provides individualized pathways already built into the system, right? So this student is being asked to do X, Y, and Z because they struggled here, 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 and here. So when they're working on that with someone, with, let's say, an interventionist is coming into the classroom and working with them on that pathway, they're focusing directly on what that individual or those group of individuals specifically needs. And there's also instances that are being generated out of iReady, for instance, where they give you suggested groupings based on these 7 students share the same need in terms of this particular skill set in this particular unit. So if you're going to do Unit 3 on whatever, look at these 7 kids, based on our data, they need this particular instruction before you begin this unit. So we can have an interventionist come in, focus with that group on those particular skills, even before that unit starts. And that group is then moving forward. So it's really, again, individualized, targeted instruction with deliberate sort of interventionalists moving into the classroom, but everybody in that classroom during math or during ELA are studying the same unit, as the superintendent pointed out. But you pull them out for different groupings and whatnot. So that, the level of learning that 3 through 6 are capable of, and how receptive they are, that level of detail, that level of personalization, that level of individualization in instructions, particularly in math and ELA, is going to make an astronomical difference, I believe. And so, to that point, that level of detail and that ability based on the data that's being generated out of iReady and sort of catering instruction to those needs on those individual levels or those small group levels, if that is to occur in the 8th grade, it would be more effective than just still doing a general whole class and not bringing it out. So there will be, that's the intervention.
So that works for 8th grade. 9th graders don't have iReady. They're not doing iReady, right? And
Yep.
they're also facing a higher passing score next year.
So this, and I want this to come across as agreeing and not tongue-in-cheek or anything like that. The last 2 hours kind of encapsulate what teachers and educators, I mean, an hour ago, we were talking about students' physical health and how can we get them extra things that they need to support. But then that comes at the cost of taking them out of classroom time, and then such is the nature of the job that superintendents and principals are publicly called to speak to test scores. And some of these test scores, I mean, students are being measured by pre-pandemic levels.
Right.
And so what we are forced to do as educators, so what is the plan? Is to go in and to focus on a look at the standards, and they look at what is there, and they look at what are the greatest areas of student need. Are students able to extricate the main idea from a text? And so from principals to teachers saying, I'm giving you permission not to worry about coverage. It's not going to be helpful if teachers say, I need to get to unit 16 by the end of the year, and if I don't, it's going to be a problem. I'm in front of a microphone right now. I don't care if my teachers get through the core content or get to every coverage, and I can't see Dr. Williams, I might get in trouble for this later, I don't know. But like what I care about is, are the students needing the skills that they need, and are the teachers empowered to use the data and to get there, to have the time and the skill and the support to be able to recognize this is what our kids need. Our ninth graders in math need these skills. How can we get there? How can we reinforce that? And that's incumbent upon all of us to do the work that we're already talking about with these, how we are identifying and focusing and teaching and pushing. iReady is a great start, and it's a great tool, and it helps us to do that. But that's the most important work that we're doing. And to a certain extent, we are beholden to this measuring tool, and it may get to a point where we do have a small number, but there's an uptick in terms of students that are not yet meeting expectations. And then are we able to offer those extra supports, those extra interventions? Some of it is during the school day. A lot of it comes back to staffing too. We shouldn't have to have, we haven't been fully staffed at this building through no one's fault. It's like all of these problems. That's why teachers everywhere are starting to leave the profession. People are phenomenally talented in an underrepresented and underappreciated profession. And I'm getting way off topic, but what we're doing is we're looking at the data that's there and empowering and giving teachers permission to say, what are the biggest areas of need? Sometimes it's as simple as flipping something around. It might be that a unit that's typically covered in May needs to be covered in October, because then it's something that builds, and then that's a skill set that's there. And the teacher's recognizing that this one idea, factoring, comes in on 5 different MCAS questions. And if I really push that factoring, and then suddenly it's one concept, but it hits 5 different areas, and we can do that item analysis that we talked about, that's the work that's happening. That's the work that's happening there. That's what the teachers are striving to get to, and that's what we're striving to support. And it's kind of a broad answer to a specific question.
No, and don't get me wrong, I hate that MCAS determines all of that. I hate it. I'll go on the record saying that. I hate MCAS. I tell my kids, this doesn't, you are not, your value is not indicated by your test scores. And I really don't like that the state made it more difficult at a time when we really could have used something going in the other direction. But here we are. And we're not in a position to change that.
We also have not had a student that has failed to graduate for not meeting MCAS scores.
Okay.
It hasn't happened yet. In recent memory or in my time, there are some that need to retake the test, and there are some that need to retake the assessment. We have not had one that has failed to graduate because of MCAS.
I think that's super important for any parent to be able to hear, as anxiety is heightened for what those results are, but also information that went home with results with maybe kids that were on a fine line, and what the panic that could ensue in a parent, and knowing that they're raising the measure. I think it's really important to highlight that there has not been someone in this district that has not graduated due to MCAS scores.
Not every child passes the driving test the first time, and you can take it multiple times. You can take it multiple times, same as this. And so that first time that we take them, they get an idea of what it looks like, what it feels like, what they're saying. They come back around, we can get acceleration, they can get supports. We look at where they fall down, and look at how many other 10th graders fell down in this area, and say, you're not the only one. you might not have passed it, but you're not the only person that fell down in this area, and this is an area we need to beef up. That's something that we'll be looking at. The item analysis, it will help us going forward as they uptick. You know, the commissioner spoke last week at the MASC. From the commissioner's mouth was, I don't like this either, but we are held accountable, and he did.
Okay, then do something about it. I feel like he kind of contradicted himself, because on one hand, he talked about the MCAS scores and everything, and then on the other hand, he talked about the learning loss, but he talked about the social emotional issue and the kids that have, and adults, just everybody, because we all just came out of this pandemic or whatever, and how the kids are impacted with their social emotional growth, with their developmental growth. And so they're all impacted. So he's saying instead of one thing he said was instead of the Acceleration Academy and the extra learning and stuff was let the kids have a break and let them blow off steam. So he's saying one thing on one hand, one thing on the other, and I'm like, whoa.
So let's make sure everybody gets enough
Educators deal
physical
with this
activity, and
every
let's
day.
make sure everybody doesn't have any anxiety. But also, we're gonna make this test that causes more anxiety than anything else harder to pass.
So tomorrow we have the retake, the November retakes for the MCAS at the high school are being conducted in the building the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. And I can tell you, and maybe my phone's buzzing in my pocket for Mr. Taylor sending me numbers at home, I don't know. But we're looking at single digits number of students right now that are taking it in November that for some reason did not earn a passing score in the spring. Anecdotally, off the top of my head, I know we're dealing with at least one student who was hospitalized. I know we're dealing with another student that transferred in from a private school and had some disrupted learning. I know there are some students in there that have struggled academically but are working and are striving to make it. But what we're looking at now in November is those students are in the single digits already and none of them are seniors, which is not which is not that point. And I keep coming back to, if we're looking for something reassuring to come out of this, we have not had a student fail to graduate because of MCAS.
I think it seems really exciting about the future, right? For the data we have and for what it could mean for what results look like when we fast forward time, it seems exciting to be able to have those numbers and look at those. I think it would be absurd to not acknowledge that when you look at the pool of kids that have, when you look at 10th grade math, for example, and you look at what was going on during the pandemic, you know, I could manage my second grader and partially managing at home the math of that, you know, but if you asked me years ago to take my 7th and 8th grader and at home try to instruct what was being lost from the classroom, I'm lost, right? Like, so when I think about what was managed at home during remote learning, and then those MCAS numbers reflective of that loss, of course there's loss. It would be absurd to think there's not. We as parents, we're not able, we're working, we're doing whatever, but even that, none of us are mathematicians or ELA teachers by trade, many of us are not, right? So everybody's doing their best. Of course those numbers right now look that way when you look at the age range that they were when there was loss of learning. You know, so when I knew this was on the agenda, I don't know, it just lit a fire under me to try to figure some of this stuff out, and I just think it would be absolutely absurd to not account for the loss of learning and the age that people were at that time.
And the other piece is we need to make students part of this conversation as well. You know, we need to demystify the whole, you know, experience and just like, this is just something that happens to me at the end of the year. I mean, for us to be able to have these types of scores in the fall, these goal-setting conversations can actually happen with the students. They're happening at the elementary level. We're going to work on bringing those up through the grade levels so that students feel empowered, that they actually have an impact on how these scores change. Within the iReady reports, it tells them, based on how you scored in the fall, this is where you should be scoring. This is your growth score for the winter. This is your stretch growth. And having those conversations about what is it you think we need to do to move your scores. And that's when kids start saying, well, I guess I should do my math, my path for, you know, X number of minutes, or, you know, I could be practicing this. And then the excitement when they start to see their scores going up and knowing that they deliberately did something to change that and not just like sat back and said, well, we'll just see how we do. So, certainly having the administrators have those conversations with teachers, teachers in turn having those conversations with their students, and equipping parents with the information as well, so that they can then reinforce that at home. And as the teachers become more educated and equipped within these reports, those should be reflected in parent conferences as well.
So, at the high school, parent conferences happen before we have any of this. Has there been discussion of changing that? Because there are questions that I have that I would love
Right.
to explore, but I wasn't concerned at the time of parent conferences, so I didn't.
Right, and parents can reach out at any time, but we do have a parent conference committee in the works right now, looking at the timing of when we have parent conferences and how that matches up with, the marking periods, the assessments we give. But certainly at any time, parents can reach out, but being
But I mean, I don't want a
mindful of-
teacher, especially at the high school, has 150 kids. Oh, having 150 phone calls from, I mean, I know it wouldn't be 150, but even 75 phone calls from parents saying, can we talk about?
Right, but being more deliberate in our planning of, when we administer these, when the results come out, how parents can have that as part of the equation when they have those conferences with teachers.
Is that committee meeting now?
The parent conference committee? Yeah.
Volunteering? That sounds like a volunteer.
Well, I'll tell you right now, October's too early.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I don't think you.
there'll be a
like,
survey
enough
coming out.
5 weeks into school to tell me where they're great or where they're not. And if they do have stuff, I probably know it already, because I know my child, but I always was surprised when they have parent meetings early in October, like you've just had the kid for like a month. I don't
On the
think
other
you have a
hand,
great
December's too
assessment.
late.
Right,
I
so,
think November might be better, and that's probably where the work's gonna begin, and I just had an earlier comment, I hear how you guys are striving to think outside the box in terms of reaching individual students, individual needs, I hate this thing.
I'll get your.
And the efforts you're making to reach the kids, and then I think it's ironic that then at the end of the day, we're trying all these different things to get them, and then we still give them this standardized test, which we all acknowledge is crap. It's not measuring the students the way they should be. There's kids that have test anxiety, that conversation could probably tell everything they want about a subject, but they get to a test and they get frazzled and they fail. And I feel like we all know it's not the best way to grade the kids, and that we're still doing it. And I know, I was frustrated hearing the acknowledgement that everybody knows the increase is not appropriate, the test is probably not a great idea, but yet, here we go.
Except for those board members who voted to increase the MCAS scores, but yeah.
in the shift that's happening in so many other areas, I mean, on a call with Bridgewater State, there's now an alternative to the MTAL, because they realize that not everybody can take the test and show what they know in that. So hopefully, we'll get there at the K-12 system. But for the parent conferences, so yes, we're talking about all those things. We're developing surveys right now. There'll be a staff survey and there'll be a parent survey. And we're deliberately sending out that parent survey right around the time where conferences are happening for the Mitchell School. And there's, two schools of thought. Do parents want to have that conference before report cards so that they can actually help impact, what's happening before grades come out? Or do they want to have the grades so that then they have a more informed conversation knowing how their students are doing? So it'll be interesting. We'll collect all that data, and we'll be coming to the committee before the calendar is set for next year as to recommendations for the parent conference cycles.
They're doing a survey to send out to
So
people?
our parent conference committee is developing a survey right now, one for staff and one for parents.
When do you anticipate the survey coming out?
It'll come out right around the last week in November, first week in December, around the time where Mitchell School conferences happen.
I have one, hopefully, final comment. I'm so sorry. I really appreciate the comments. I really appreciate our context setting of what's going on, and I think this speaks all the more to work that Mr. Clements has talked about in terms of like understanding student learning and not a score and not a grade. I also just want to take a step back and look kind of at like the 30,000-foot view of like our role as a school committee to also make sure that we have the resources available to do this. These 8th graders, that 40% of them are 2 or more grades are behind, are going to be here after ESSER funds run out. So I just want to call that and make sure that we're doing that, because individualized instruction is expensive and important. But the other thing that I see here, and we don't have to comment on this tonight, is that we have 2 grades where, again, around 40% or more of students are multiple grades behind. Does this kind of like that full scale, like looking at the big picture data, also help us understand like some curriculum, like, oh, there's something we have to do here, because that's almost half our students in multiple grades. Like, I understand that the point of iReady may not be for that, it's for really that individualized path, but that's something that like I see here that I would, I have a question on, I guess.
So even within the iReady, our Ready Classroom is our math program that we're using, so those interventions are built in to the program. We have wonders for reading programs, but looking at like what are we providing for intervention supports and looking at those supplemental materials that we use for that. The bigger challenge is in the upper grades. You know, when we start looking at supplemental resources that students can access who are multiple grade levels behind, and how we utilize those resources to, as the superintendent says, still expose them to those grade level resources and not remove them so that they're constantly behind. But how do we keep that tier 1 in place and provide that tier 2 instruction, and what resources we need to do that. And that goes for our English language learners as well as our special education students.
Would you say that the students that are 1 and or 2 years behind are, a large percentage of those students are on IEPs also?
So typically, with the results, it's our English language learning students, our special education students, but clearly that's not all of them. There's, our
Economically disadvantaged.
general education students who are behind because of gaps that have formed over the years.
And I just want to, if we can come full circle over everything, I want to thank everybody for the great conversation. We enjoy the conversation. We want the questions, and we want parents to call in. Question came to me about what else could we do? Positive attitude of going forward and what we can do collectively as a community, as parents, as teachers, and as a school district, that's the attitude that needs to come forward. Not pointing fingers, not saying, why aren't we doing this, and how can we do this, but how do we, as a school committee, school district, committee, and parents get together and say, what is the attitude going in to take some of these assessments, or coming to a parent meeting? Our teachers can only do so much in 6.5 hours. When students go home that become your children, 15 minutes a night, 30 minutes of a conversation of going over a math workbook, looking at your MyPath, reading to your son or daughter at home, is an attitude adjustment for all of us to say, you're part of the learning. It can't just be here at school for 6.5 hours. When a child goes home, we have to engage. We must engage at home. We're willing to work with our parents. I'm going to table this because it's late this evening, but I came up with a job of parent outreach. We have adjustment counselors, we have guidance counselors, we've had teachers, we have tremendous principals, assistant principals, terrific partners in education here. John Shea is terrific in the business office. We are looking at resources and moving forward. So the attitude that we need to have needs to come from a collective positive attitude that people are doing the right things. People are moving in the direction of doing the right things. But when we ask you to come to a meeting to talk about MCAS, or to learn about iReady, or to come in and listen to a principal talk about assessments at the Mitchell School or the Central, everybody wants to go to the Central School. As the kids grow, we get less and less people that want to come in and engage with the principal. We want to engage about the prom, we want to engage about pep rallies, we want to engage about social activities at the high school, or when, is my kid going to graduate or get a diploma? This is when we need to be at meetings, and I hope that people know that we want you here. It's okay to have difficult conversations, and it's okay to be upset, but let's walk it through together, talk about it, collaborate, communicate, and have an active conversation with a positive attitude. And that will raise test scores, it'll raise assessments, it'll raise an attitude of looking at iReady that it's an assessment, but yet it's also for us and for the principals, they're using it for the growth mindset for the teacher, for their instructional strategies, and a growth mindset for the students, and even for the principals to be able to have critical conversations with instructional leaders of their classroom.
Is it safe to say for the students that are the older grades that are behind, it might be appropriate to ask for some more support at home?
Yes.
Kind of an all-on, it's, COVID did that. I mean, the kids have gained weight.
But you also have to give the parents some guidance on that.
And that's what I'm saying. We're here to do that, and I think, I mean, we've had technology, I mean, I'm going to use this one, particular one. Erin Fisher every year does technology night. What does she call that down in Mitchell School?
The Steam night?
No, it's not Steve night.
No, she
Erin Fisher.
introduces the technology that students will be using. So
Yeah, and then she also does and then, what not to go on, what sites not to go on, and how to.
Oh, like a technology night type thing.
Yeah. She's one of our best when you go out. When you go to a parent conference and to watch someone, her Mass Q presentations are wonderful. Her presentations are tremendous. We're not even full. 30 parents to come in. And then we have someone say, well, and we had a child in Bridgewater, Rainham that was on the internet and ended up in New York City. And we have nights at the school districts to talk about these types of activities that go on and how to avoid them, and how parents should be going on their child's phone or on their Chromebooks to see where they're looking. What are they surfing? What are they doing? We need you. We want to help. Our guidance counselors, we're out every night. I can't imagine that if any of the principals or Gina or I got a call and said, we want this on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. I don't think a principal or any of us would say, no way, we don't want to talk about that. So, and like if you ask for guidance or you want help, we're certainly there to help and to support guidance for teachers. So, for parents. Nobody's not trying. But I think it's all of us together. I mean, I say it all the time, it takes a village to raise a child.
Thank you.
And I know it's getting late, and this is what happens. When you talk about important things, and it gets to 9 o'clock, people are like, man, this is a long meeting. But if we don't talk about it, it's not going to get out there. So, started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we can't get everybody here. Started at 7, we're here too late. And I know we have some parents that probably have signed up to ask some questions, so.
Thank you. Well, we'll go through, the rest of it's pretty quick. Okay, so.
Table it.
Yeah. So after review, so we brought back the superintendent evaluation, end of cycle summative evaluation. So I move to approve the superintendent evaluation, end of cycle summative evaluation report standards and indicators, superintendent performance goals and timeline. That's, it's in your packet, and the last time, so these are the same goals as the last time, and the only thing that we added was the indicators that were missing. So, indicators that, the superintendent evaluation, subcommittee decided on, along with the superintendent, was, 1B, 1E, 2B, 2E, and, 3A, 3D, 4A, 4B, and that's it. And those also correspond with our strategic plan and the goals. So I move that we accept that. So do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Amanda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I would have a question.
Sure, go ahead,
I don't know
Gordon.
if you can hear me still.
We can hear you, but hurry up because the laptop's going to die. Sorry to rush you.
Under the goals, district improvement, hire a consulting firm to complete an equity audit. Can somebody define to me what's involved in an equity audit? What's its purpose?
At the subcommittee, we talked talked about this a bit. Part of it would be part of the, bye Gordon, discussion. You're just moving.
Take it away.
We're trying to plug you in so you stay alive.
You said you wanted to be suspended from the ceiling, so John gave you your wish. Part of it would be defined like by the consultant, but also to really look at, it's anywhere from ensuring that we have an environment that's welcoming for a more diverse staff, but also, do we have equity in our policies? Are there things we can adjust there that may make our school environment more welcoming, inclusive, and culturally responsive to staff and students? Was that a good summation? There we go.
Great job.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Kind of what I thought it was, I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, all in favor? Gordon, would you like to start?
McKinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
Fiddler, aye.
Walker, aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. And we have the first reading of recommended updates to the following policies. So these are, I could say we'll make it quick. So as written, and they're policies from section D and one from K. And I would move to approve these recommended updates to the, oh, no, I actually don't have to make it.
It's the first reading, right? So we don't
Yes,
have
no,
to-
I don't have to make it.
Okay.
No motion this time. So it's the first reading. And they're in your packet, and they should be highlighted with red lines, so you'll see what the changes were. And they're all basically Mass General Law changes.
Ellen, can I ask a question?
Sure.
On policy DJE, I think there's a new law that goes into effect November 24th.
Yes. Hold on. Let's get to DJE.
Procurement requirements.
There was one I needed to talk to you about. I made a note to myself. I haven't talked to you about it yet.
About the purchase materials?
This could have been it, purchasing.
Or
the
Yes, or
Procurement requirements?
Yeah,
I
procurement.
think that $50,000 number was changed to 100,000. And I think that goes into effect November 24th.
Oh, okay, so I don't have that information. This is the most recent information that came in on this last newsletter. So I need to find out about it, if you think that it's higher.
It's 100,000.
Okay, so then I need to find out about, I need to look into it. Because when we did this is the red line, the red line is the,
Yeah, as of September, that's what we got.
We could
I
just,
mean, it's coming out as,
yeah.
I mean,
So we could just pull that
probably in the last
policy and not vote on it at the
Right.
next meeting and make it its own first reading later.
right. Okay, thank you, John. And next up, we have our public comment section, and one thing, I don't know if the people that are here, there's a list, there's a sheet up there to sign and put your address with your name if you wanted to speak. But are any of you interested in speaking?
I'm actually going to send you an email, like you asked me to,
Okay, oh, thank you.
and then we can go through, I'll be really brief.
Sure, we're having a hard time
First of
hearing
all,
you.
thank you all for hanging out, because I know it's hard to sit through everything when you didn't necessarily come here for
No, but it was
everything,
really actually enlightening for me to see there's bigger issues than just my child, what's going in my household, and how hard you guys are all working. So I definitely applaud you for that.
Thank you.
The vaping that's going on in the school, it's definitely impacted my family with two of my children. I have one more that's coming up, and so I am going to send an email to have some history backing that, and also perhaps make some recommendations, and also bring up some things that I've been told that were going to happen but have not happened, which I understand why. I know it's a bigger problem than just, a few kids. So I am going to send you guys an email, okay? All right, and thank you I liked how you addressed it perfectly. I'm sorry. But I liked how you addressed it. We have to do something. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
You can speak whatever you like.
It's nice to have people in the audience. We don't always have people that come to stay and listen to our meeting.
Why are there, there should be way more. I'm surprised. All right, I'll be here every
Spread the
time,
word.
all right? Yes.
Thank you.
Can we get better cookies though? I'm sorry. All right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Everybody wrote their names down.
Did you all, well, it's really just if they want to speak. It's just a, yeah. But, oh,
I signed in to ask a couple
okay.
questions.
Could you just state your name at the mic?
Sure. Kelly Faisal, 9 Paris Farm Road. So I have some questions regarding the accreditation, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer them or not now that the principal's left.
One thing, I have to cut you off. Sorry. So for questions, if you have questions, so for the public comment period, you're allowed to make comments and things, but if you have questions, we would have to get back to you with the questions, because we have to finish conducting this meeting, and, well, it's not supposed to be a question and answer session, it's just.
Okay, that's fine, I'll make them comments. I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for the accreditation.
But feel free to email us if you feel like you need some questions answered. We would love to be able to answer them.
Okay, yeah, I would just love to see the report action items and the exact results of them. For example, I read articles back, when it all happened. And one of the things in the article stated, and I don't know if it's true, but one of the action items were that we didn't have enough classes, we didn't have enough teachers, we didn't have enough AP classes. So I would love to see a concrete list of what's changed between now and then and now. So that's one comment. And then just a comment about, it sounds like there are great changes happening. And I'm wondering if there was a model taken from maybe some top schools in the state or something to implement that. Sounds like takeaway finals is kind of a big deal, a whole new structure, and kids are going to get into college, and I'm not aware of them taking away finals, so I could see them being unprepared for that if we're doing that here. So I would just love some, affirmation that that is a good way to go. Other schools have done it, and it's done well for them. And then also just about iReady, and I don't know if you guys know, but it's only 15% of the nation that uses it. And I don't know, I couldn't get an answer from iReady if that's, 100% of Massachusetts is in there, or 80% of Massachusetts versus 10% of California or something like that. But in iReady, it will give you a percentage across the nation of kids who take iReady. And it's hard to know when that's only 15% of the country where that's coming from. And I'm wondering with MCAS if current schools in the state look like this. And I don't know if you guys know that or not, but that might be something worth looking into.
Thank you. So we can have someone get back to you with for answers to your questions.
Yeah, and also I think you were asking if iReady was available for 9th grade. Do we know that?
I wasn't asking if it was available, I asked if we were doing it.
Right, but I don't even know if it's available, so I just never heard the answer to that for you. Sounded like that might be a good thing to implement for 9th grade if it's something imminent.
So,
works so well for
I
the
know
younger
that
grades.
iReady is not available beyond 8th grade. They are working on specific content tests, like an algebra test through iReady, but nothing that would be globally across the math concepts in 9th grade, just because the different math courses get more individualized at each grade level, so it's not just general math concepts. But iReady, the diagnostic is fairly new, and so they keep adding to it. So even like the 7th and 8th grade has just been revamped, and so that's why we did not buy into 7th and 8th grade when we initially bought K to 6, because it hadn't been as widely used. The research hadn't been there to really solidify for us that it was going to be that good comparison to the MCAS, whereas a lot more work has been done matching the iReady to the Massachusetts standards, so that we can look at a comparison of, a predictor of how our students are going to perform on the MCAS using a diagnostic. So one of the main reasons why we moved from the MAP assessment to iReady.
And we have an additional guest in our audience. Do you have any comments for us? No.
I was just here to educate myself and just stay in the loop.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Did she get a copy of this one too?
I gave it to her. Did I give you that one?
Oh, it does, awesome. I'd love to see it. Thank you.
I think we put those up, didn't we? Put those up today? Okay. Okay, so
Every school district in the state is available online through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, so is that what you were asking, is comparing us to all the other towns?
Yeah, I'm curious to see.
we could put them up tomorrow.
Yeah, if you like,
Somewhere.
Google the school district and DESI, or it's called the Profiles Report, right, and DART, they have reports. It's exactly what was printed out, right? You guys took it right from there.
Very easy to navigate.
Absolutely. And it has all the explanations too, and you can see like the response rates and all that fun stuff too.
Kelly, we sent that letter out with the commissioner, right? Tomorrow, we'll put it back up, and we'll highlight the link to the profile in the DART. And then, let me see if I can pull them off, and we'll put them up there, the states.
And DART matters because it's our comparable districts.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, I would take a motion to accept the generous donation from the Gordon W. Mitchell School PTA in the amount of $11,237.62 for 30 Chromebooks and 3 Chromebook charging carts, and the funds are to be deposited into the student activities account, 890-250-2554.
So moved.
Moved by Amanda.
I have a question about this.
Oh, can we second it first?
Sure.
And then we do discussion.
Second.
Oh, thank you. Discussion?
Why do Chromebooks come out of PTA funds and not operation, like a budget somewhere else?
There is a budget for Chromebooks. Each year, we renew the 3rd grade and 7th grade. So we buy new Chromebooks for 3rd grade and 7th grade. So we have a budget.
So, what happened that we needed to pull $11,000 from the PTA to buy more Chromebooks?
I wasn't part of that.
I wasn't part of that.
We were there.
That would be
Loaner system.
when the PTA meets with Mr. Paquette, he must have said, oh, we need X, Y, Z, if they have broken carts or
I
something.
mean, I'm glad that there are Chromebooks for the kids to use, because I know, like, we're not even getting the Chromebooks home these days, so
Right.
I know I believe what has been happening at the Mitchell School is more and more are being returned for issues regarding broken keys, broken screens. The kids are pulling off the keys. And what they plan on doing with these 30 Chromebooks is keeping them in the office. So when a kid does come to the office with a broken Chromebook, they'll give him one of these 30 loaner.
So we didn't already have that built in? No?
We have extra Chromebooks.
Okay.
I am sure that at some point, Mr. Paquette was in a meeting, and they brought that up, and somebody probably at the PTA brought it up and said, we need more Chromebooks, and it was probably brought up like that.
I just would have, I guess I would have assumed that he would have come to maybe John and said, hey, this is a problem we have at the office, at Mitchell School. Can you help me solve it out of the school budget? I mean, it's not, I'm just curious how it all works out, because just last week, we had talked about how, oh, there's a system of, and it's budget, and you, basically what you just said to me. So when this came up the very next meeting, I was like, wait a second. So I was just curious how
Are
it,
we allowed to weigh in at all? Because we were there at the meeting when that happened, PTA meeting.
Sure.
Okay, so just, the background of how it happened.
Well, they're interested in hearing, so you can give us the inside info.
Yeah, so Mr. Paquette brought it up to us, because there's a grant program we do out of the funds. And he said he had tried to get the ones they needed from the district multiple times and wasn't able to. And he really seemed at his wit's end, that they really needed these Chromebooks. He would spend time every day trying to troubleshoot them, not only physical damage, but, I don't know, ran out of space, or I don't know what, internet connections, whatever. But he himself was taking time to try to fix these on the fly. And I think a couple of the carts, they didn't have chargers in the classroom. And he estimated they need 30, and that they didn't have enough spares throughout the day.
okay, thank you.
I have a room with 2 huge boxes of Chromebooks.
So if this was not passed, there's access to 30 Chromebooks?
Well, they've already spent the money.
Oh, it's
No, we
already
have.
Yeah.
Oh,
These
that's how that
funds
happened.
were
It's not
originally
in-
in the Chromebook section in the budget, when we needed, can that be pulled somewhere else?
Yeah. But, I mean, we've spent, for Chromebooks, we purchased a whole third grade and a whole seventh grade full of Chromebooks. And we have extras.
This seems like a good problem to have.
It's definitely, we could buy 1,000 Chromebooks, and a kid, if you saw all the broken Chromebooks I have from students, it's a revolving door trying to keep up with the Chromebooks. Every week, my staff would deliver Chromebooks down there, pick up the ones that are broken. You know, maybe if that timing wasn't good enough, I mean, that's something we could work on, but we have plenty of Chromebooks.
So at
This-
point
this
in
will
front of
help.
us, It's done though, right? Like, at this point in front of us, it's just notifying us.
I
that
just
this-
wanted, for the record, it has not been spent.
Oh, okay.
No, if we,
Upon
we're not gonna
acceptance,
say
the
no, we're
full
not gonna
amount will
take
be
it, but
deposited in the account.
it would have to go back to this, the PTA, then they would have their meeting, and they would have to decide how they're gonna reallocate the money, or what, like, there's a whole process.
I have no problem making this happen tonight. I'm just curious. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to the PTA, and figure it out. I mean, I'd rather get the Chromebooks and I'm not gonna hold this up and have things not happen. I wanted more information.
We were hesitant to approve it. I was hesitant to approve it.
Okay.
If you guys have them, why are we gonna buy them?
Later. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Gordon? Oh, good, you
McKinnon,
can-
aye.
Pennington, aye.
So, I'm sorry, now I'm like, so if we did not approve this, we could go back to, sorry, I'm just reiterating, that this would go back to the PTA and the Mitchell School would decide how else to spend the money, correct?
And they could always come back to us again if they're like, whoa, you guys messed up.
Yeah, and Mr. Parquette would hopefully not have to stay until 10 PM next time, but we'll make sure you get.
But in the meantime, there's still the problem of there having no Chromebooks to.
Well, it sounds like we could solve that, though.
And then do you have the funding for carts?
Carts are really not that much money. We could fund the carts too. I mean, having an extra 30 Chromebooks is great. I mean, it's very helpful for the school. But what's gonna happen is those 30 Chromebooks are gonna be down there, and they're gonna think, all right, everything's great, we've got 30 extra Chromebooks, and in a week and a half, those 30 extra Chromebooks are gonna be out with students, and I'm gonna have 45 broken Chromebooks. So, that 30 Chromebooks is gonna help. It's definitely gonna help. It will allow my staff to have some time to fix some of the broken Chromebooks. I mean, what we really need to do is have those Mitchell School students stop tearing out the keyboards and stop breaking the screens. That would really help.
But how do we do that? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's a multi-layered problem.
Yeah,
And in the end, I want the kids to be able to have the tools they need to learn, because I know we rely on Chromebooks so much in the classroom.
I mean, this is the first I'm hearing. Last year, how many times have we heard we've had Chromebook problems from parents, from students? I mean, I don't think we have a Chromebook problem, but I mean, if there is a Chromebook problem, because I haven't heard of any Chromebook problems. I mean, we've been keeping up with supplying Chromebooks every week. So, I mean, if there's a problem that I'm not aware of, I mean, I'm happy to work on that like we did last year. But I think last year was every week, we were getting drilled about the issues we were having with Chromebooks.
And just to clarify, if there are issues with any of these new 30 Chromebooks, the district is going to like help support them and stuff, right? This isn't like, sorry, Mitchell, it's your problem.
Yeah, so
Donation to the school.
Matt came to us and said that, well, the PTA wants to donate some Chromebooks. We said, that's fine. Let us get the quote so we can give you the correct specs. We can buy it off a state contract. We get the 3-year warranty.
Yeah.
So my IT guys did, they go out and get 3 quotes.
And is that reflective of what's in here? Or
That
no?
is the quote that's in there.
But in terms of upkeep of them,
Well,
like,
they become our property.
the district as a whole, so that
Yep.
it would be like any other Chromebook,
Any
which
other
would always
Chromebook.
just have 30 extra.
Yep.
I just don't want this to set a precedent of us using PTA money for equipment that should be expected to have. I guess that's my big, I was kind of surprised to see this, because I'm like, that's not, I didn't think that's what PTA money is for. It should come just like a textbook. I mean, we use it just like that, it should come from the school budget. So,
Yeah, and in the past, if we've had a need for Chromebooks, I've come to you guys and said, listen, we need 100 Chromebooks. Would you mind if we get it out of school choice? And you guys have always agreed.
So John, when you said Matt came and asked and you guys got the quote, that was because you were under the impression you would be delivered Chromebooks, not because a check would be written?
No, I wasn't under that impression.
Okay, I'm confused, so the, not knowing about it, but then knowing about it. And I don't mean that to sound accusatory, I'm truly confused.
I knew that they had decided.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Gotcha.
I wasn't in the discussion about them buying Chromebooks. I knew they had already decided to do it.
Gotcha.
And Matt came to us and said, how can we do this? And I said, well, the best thing to do was for us to get a quote and us to pay for it
Gotcha.
with the donation from them,
Gotcha.
rather than them going out and buying them.
I understand. Thank you.
If he had come to you and said, I really need about $11,200 worth of this, could you have gotten it from the already set aside budget, use these funds for something else? Or is it raised for that purpose?
I believe so. I mean, the PTA is a separate entity from the school, and they work with the Mitchell School teachers and principal, and they help support them.
I don't want to
So-
say it's grateful. It's grateful.
Yeah, no,
It's like this, and it's gonna- I was always curious, if a child drops their Chromebook or breaks, that happens, they're pulling keys off and defacing it intentionally. Is the family responsible to recoup that, or is it?
Well, if they're pulling keys off, we can fix that. And so we go over, pick up the Chromebook, bring it back here, fix it, and it's just a constant back and forth, so, yeah.
So we never really charge any of the families?
We do here, where we see actual intent to, run it over with your car, which has happened more than once.
Okay, so like normal wear and tear over time?
Right, no, we won't.
We're like intentionally tossing it around?
Right.
That makes sense. I was just always curious about that.
So do we have the funds that we can actually do that and give the money back to the PTA and have them decide how else they would like to use that money?
Yeah, but we do. But like I said, 30 Chromebooks is a benefit to us too. I mean,
right, and I don't think anyone's disputing that the Chromebooks and the carts are a good idea. I think the issue we're having is using PTA money to pay for something that the school budget should cover.
Well, the school budget isn't this a PTA issue?
Right.
It's not our issue, right?
But if a principal is coming to them and saying that he has a need,
Oh.
I mean, this
didn't hear
is why we have to approve it in the end. You know what I mean? The PTA can write the check and be like, here, we want to help you solve a problem. But I think it's our job to make sure,
We know it's a problem and we're adjusting things appropriately.
But this sounds like the request was for Chromebooks to develop a loaner system. So
Yes.
all students have a Chromebook. He
So-
probably has a set of,
I am going to interrupt. So unfortunately, my daughter, her Chromebook had a software issue where certain keys were not working, and she was told one was being ordered, So she was without a Chromebook, thought that was the end of the world, for 4 weeks, waiting for Chromebooks to come in.
And I've heard from parents that the kids can't bring their Chromebooks home because there aren't enough for every student in the classroom.
Yeah, there is something going on.
I haven't had a Chromebook home from my Mitchell student all year yet.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a problem, because he does his homework on.
Right, so that's a
paper,
different
But he
problem.
doesn't have, like, he can't use his Chromebook to do any iReady at home, not that he'd want to, but that's a whole
Right.
different story.
Oh, so I was under the impression that this was just to establish like a loaner system and maybe give more time between those ones that need to be fixed. If he only had a dozen loaners and he was needing a quicker turnaround with those, the 30 would give him a little bit more flexibility.
That is how the request is outlined.
Have Chromebooks.
That is how the request was
So
outlined.
those aren't loaners then. Basically, the PTA is, from what I'm hearing, is purchasing Chromebooks because there are students who don't have them.
Well, there's a discrepancy, because the request does say, I read it as, establishing a loaner program.
Right.
But there's clearly a bigger problem here.
Can we request that we get some more information on this with like numbers of like, if this is a larger conversation that the district should buy more Chromebooks, what we need,
Or we need better policies on how to not make them break in the, maybe third graders can't be trusted with Chromebooks, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, then I think we should table this one, and, here's a question. When's the next PTA meeting?
Tomorrow.
Oh.
When, tomorrow?
At what
So-
time?
Of course it is.
Then,
What time, 6:30?
well, knowing that they have, they need the charging stations.
but we still need a quote and like.
Well, we have the quote. We have the quote for the charging, the quote in here is for, it's for the Chromebooks and the charging stations together. Let me go.
Yeah, it's for everything.
It's for everything together, but I think what we've discovered is that there's a bigger issue than maybe 30 Chromebooks can solve.
Oh, it says the table carts, the charging carts.
Yeah.
The top one, okay.
Yeah, I think this needs, I agree, I think this needs larger discussion.
Are the Chromebooks part of the grant request, like all these other requests come from teachers? Is that,
Yes, he did that because he said he tried to get more Chromebooks from the district multiple times and couldn't.
but are there parameters around what can be requested through that grant funding? Like, can teachers supplement
Well, but that's the
the,
first thing we asked for, was shouldn't the district be funding this? And he was met with, he's tried and they won't.
I think what the PTA does is they take a certain Kelly might know some of this because you were on the PTA, but like they take a percentage of some of the fund run money and they put that aside for like grants for the teachers. And every teacher is given, I think, $100 to then submit what they want to buy with that $100, and then that's given. But then I think there's also, I think there was like a excess money that was then also kind of almost like on a first come, first serve. If the teachers came up with, these are some extra items we would love. I think like third grade came up with like a whole bunch of outdoor recess things or indoor recess things, I don't know. That they would come to the PTA and say, here's why we need these, this is how much it will cost, and then the PTA went through. I think this was the first time they had ever gotten one from a principal. And I know that it was asked many times, because we had that same question of like, isn't this something that shouldn't really come from the PTA, that should come from, because clearly we haven't had requests like that from teachers before, but it was, typically it's like extra stuff from the teachers, not like the technology and stuff
And this
like
is a
that.
very large sum. It's
Yeah.
usually like under
Yeah, we
$1,000.
have, that's the next item on the agenda, is to approve the other ones that are all like a couple $100.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So that's why it raised a lot of questions and concern, because that was basically all the overage, it pretty much drained us.
I think the PTA would have no problem.
If we didn't have funds
figuring-
elsewhere, yeah.
Not using the $11,000
Yeah.
and using it elsewhere. If the district has the Chromebooks and if the district could do the Chrome cards. The issue is that I think he said, it probably says it in that paperwork. There are a couple Chrome cards that, we're just not charging the Chromebooks anymore. They're just not. And the teachers are struggling to get the kids their lessons done because none of the Chromebooks are charging properly, and so the Chrome cards. So there were a couple Chrome cards that absolutely had issues. I think Mr. Paquette's thought was that lots of times, sometimes they are broken, and so kids are going without them. Sometimes it's also a kid forgets theirs at school, at home, and then is kind of out on the lessons that they're doing during the day. And so how can we make it so that kids aren't missing lessons because they're forgetting it, or because their Chromebook's not working, or something like that. So that was like the idea of the loaning, is that you sign it out, and then at the end of the day, you return it. I don't know if it was meant for long-term or not. I don't want to speak for him and all the issues, but this is what I think was reflected at the PTA meeting, was that there definitely is a need, because there's a lot of students every given day that do not have their Chromebooks with them in class. And they're supposed to be doing their iReady, and they're supposed to be doing this, but they literally don't have a Chromebook. For one reason or another. I don't know. I don't know about any bigger Chromebook issues. It was just the
day-to-day.
losing, not losing it, but missing it at home, or it just not working that day.
Okay, I would like to make a motion after some consulting with my colleague. I move that we respectfully decline the $11,000, what was the amount? The $11,000 amount, $11,237.62, and respectfully give it back to the PTA so they can decide how else they would like to spend the money, because I will make another motion for us to spend this money and get the middle school what they need out of our own funding.
So is that two motions or one?
I'm gonna make one motion for this, and then one motion, so I'm rescinding the other motion that we made before, just pretend that didn't happen.
So I will second the motion that we respectfully decline the $11,000, $237.62.
I second.
And whatever she said, I second. You made it, I second.
Okay, and any further discussion? So, Gordon, you still there? There he is.
Yeah, do I have to take back my aye?
Yeah, we already rescinded that, so go ahead, you can just say McKinnon, aye.
Are you going to take this back again?
No.
Please no.
Okay, McKinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Halligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
Fiddler, aye.
Walker, aye.
It's unanimous. So we appreciate their donation, but I hope that you will find a really good way to spend this money. Thank you.
I hope you still get Mr. Paquette his Chromebooks.
Well, he'll still get them, yeah. So,
They hate me.
I make a motion that, where's the dollar amount again? I move that we allocate $11,237.62 from our own funds to spend on Chromebook charging carts and Chromebooks, 30 Chromebooks for the Mitchell School.
Second.
This school can have discussion.
Yes, now we can have a
Yes.
discussion.
John, this sounds like the original 11,237 was kind of like a rainy day, loaner surplus.
Yeah.
If us putting forth a motion to have you take 11,000 out of the budget to do this, is that going to be okay?
Sure. Sure. You could take it out of a revolving fund.
Yeah.
You could take it, couldn't, right.
I know for my budget, I give $5,000 extra, and save it, great. But it's not, I have to move it.
Well,
My job in Brockton.
I'm not looking for him to take it out of our current budget, because I don't want to make anything, I don't want to adversely affect anything. What my intention was for him to take it out of school choice or some other applicable revolving account that he could use to pay for those items.
I just didn't know if he needed more than 1 second to do that.
I'm good. We can do it.
I trust you, so.
I'm confused. Shouldn't, if we need these books, shouldn't that come from John, who's telling us, hey, this is what we need? And now we're all of a sudden saying, okay, we're going to give you these. I guess it'll help, but it seems weird that we're kind of out of sync here. If John needs the books, he would come to us and we would vote for it. Sounds like we're voting for it preemptively.
Well, I think we have established that there's a problem.
And there's a need.
And that there is a need, but I also, my concern with just being like, yep, here you go, get your Chromebooks, is we haven't solved the problem that surfaced by all of this coming up here.
Correct. But I'm sure that it will be resolved, because superintendent can weigh in as soon as we're done voting.
Well, I think, I mean, I would feel more comfortable if there's more research done to whether there is a problem and what is the problem.
Before voting on spending $11,000 and change, spending some time to see how else there can be, making sure this need can be met without jumping on it tonight in this very moment.
And if we need loaner programs anywhere else beyond the Mitchell School, is that the other question?
We're delivering Chromebooks every day, well, every week to all the schools. It's what we do. We pick up the broken ones, we deliver the fixed ones or new ones.
The fact still remains that they need charging cards over
So
there.
I think I think we maybe don't do this tonight. And
We have to wait till December.
Well, that's okay, because it's $11,000.
I just feel like there are people that aren't communicating that should be communicating, or something's broken somewhere that we can't fix. And I think that's the problem to solve before we decide to spend $11,000.
Okay. I have to go.
And that's not, that's,
Let me look and see what we have in school choice. We have $882,000 and $882,557 in school choice right now.
but that's not the point. The point isn't whether we have the money. The point is whether or not, the point is that there's a bigger problem here. Do we really maybe only need the 30 Chromebooks? Maybe we need more. Maybe we need to assess the whole situation of what's happening over at Mitchell and figure out a better solution. I do agree that there seems to be an urgent need, but I'm gonna trust the people at the table to maybe go and figure out what that urgent need is and hopefully figure out a way to solve it. I don't know. But I hesitate to just say, yes, $11,000, go solve the problem, when it might not solve the problem.
I think it's clear we are open to, as John mentioned, supporting this, that is, it seems to be a basic need for the learning in the district that we have set forth, if that is the case. But I tend to agree. I think this needs to come from our budget, and I think we need some more investigation.
I agree with you.
To tell you the truth, I'm really upset to hear from a parent that a kid hasn't had a Chromebook for 4 weeks, and I'm hearing it at this meeting. So that, I mean, I think you guys know me by now. That's not right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here at this table is saying, you're being stingy. I think there's a
I think there's just a disconnect.
I think there's a communication problem, maybe.
I think if Mr. Pitt had come to you and said, John, I need 30 more Chromebooks in these cars, you get it to him. There's a need. So it seems like the path is circumvented a little bit, and the PTA funds are available. They probably should go somewhere else, and we can budget this in if it's a need. But it probably needs to go to the proper channels.
I'll put it, I'll stop the
Can we get to the end of this one?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, let me stop this conversation. Let me speak to Mr. Paquette in the morning. I will find out the issue. I will come back, I will relay the issue. I will speak to John Shea. We will come up with a solution, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we,
then I'm rescinding the motion that I made.
we're making it really difficult for you, Kelly, so you're doing
Right.
great.
She can watch the video.
All right, next one.
I trust.
Let's get it good.
I just find my, okay. I would take a motion to accept the generous donation from the Gordon W. Mitchell School PTA in the amount of $3,883.47 for teacher grant requests, and the funds are to be deposited into the middle school donation account 263308674860.
So moved.
Moved by Amanda, second by Scott. All in favor?
No, you
Oh,
have to,
McKinnon,
McKinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
Thank you, PTA. I would take a motion to accept the donation of the Webb Boys hockey jerseys.
Oh, so moved.
Moved by Amanda, second by Scott. Thank you, Webb Boys Hockey. All in favor?
No.
Kinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
Thank you, it's unanimous. I would take a motion to approve the minutes from the October 25th, 2022 regular school committee meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Amanda, second by Scott. Gordon?
Kinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
It's unanimous. I would take a motion to approve accounts payable warrants 19 SV dated November 2nd, 22.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Amanda, second by Lauren. Gordon?
Kinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
Thank you, it's unanimous. And I take a motion to approve payroll warrants 18 PS dated 10/26/22.
So moved.
Moved by Amanda, second by Scott. Gordon?
Kinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
It's unanimous. And before we close our meeting, I would like to thank our veterans in early, as Veterans Day is coming up this Friday. And I would take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Superintendent,
Yes, it's
Yes.
very long.
Yep.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
moved by Amanda. Second by Scott. Gordon?
McKinnon, aye.
Pennington, aye.
Colligan, aye.
Foster, aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you for staying so late.
Oh, thank you.